The cathedral doors exploded open mid-ceremony, and every conversation died instantly. Vivian Laurent walked through silence wearing burgundy silk-like armor, her hand resting against the arm of Kang Min-seo, the Korean Mafia Boss whose name made politicians sweat and criminals disappear. At the altar, her ex-boyfriend Ethan forgot his bride existed. The woman in white noticed. Everyone noticed. But Vivian never flinched. She just sat down beside the most dangerous man in the room, like she'd already survived worse than anything they could imagine. This is her story. Watch until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Bam! 3 weeks before Vivian Laurent walked into that cathedral, like a ghost wrapped in expensive fabric, she'd been sitting on her apartment floor in Manhattan eating stale cereal straight from the box at 2 in the morning. Same oversized shirt she'd worn for 48 hours. Hair unwashed. Mascara smudged beneath eyes that had cried themselves empty 6 months earlier and now just stared at walls. The invitation arrived that morning. Cream-colored envelope, gold-embossed lettering, the kind of stationery people bought when they wanted everyone to know they'd made it. Ethan Vale and Sophia Lynn request the honor of your presence at their wedding ceremony. Paris. 3 weeks away. Black tie. And at the bottom, handwritten in Ethan's familiar slanted script she used to think was charming. Hope you've moved on. 4 words that reopened every wound she thought had finally scarred over. Vivian sat there holding that invitation for 20 minutes straight, not moving, barely breathing. Her roommate Casey found her like that when she came home from her bartending shift, still in her work clothes smelling like beer and cigarette smoke. Jesus Christ, Casey muttered, dropping her bag. Tell me that's not what I think it is. Vivian handed it over without speaking. Casey read it once, twice. Then her face twisted into something between fury and protective rage. That absolute piece of shit. He broke up with you over text message 8 months ago and now he's inviting you to watch him marry someone else? And he had the audacity to write that? He probably thinks it's classy, Vivian said quietly. Her voice sounded hollow even to herself, like extending an olive branch. It's a fucking grenade with a ribbon on it. Vivian almost smiled. Almost. Maybe I deserve it. Don't. Casey crouched down beside her, gripping her shoulder hard. Don't you dare go there again. You spent 6 months blaming yourself for his bullshit. He left because he's a coward who couldn't handle how real you were. That's on him. But Vivian couldn't stop staring at those 4 words. Hope you've moved on. Like it was that simple. Like 8 months erased 2 years of planning a future together. Like she hadn't spent every night for the first 3 months checking her phone hoping he'd realize his mistake. Like she hadn't finally started sleeping through the night only to have this land in her mailbox and rip everything open again. You're not going, Casey said firmly. Right? Tell me you're not actually considering this. Vivian looked up at her best friend and said the truest thing she'd felt in months. I can't let him think I'm still broken. Casey's expression shifted from anger to something closer to fear. Viv. I know how it sounds. I know it's stupid and self-destructive and exactly what I shouldn't do. Vivian stood up, legs shaking slightly from sitting too long. But if I don't go, he'll assume I stayed home crying over him. He'll tell himself I couldn't handle seeing him happy. And I can't give him that. So what's your plan? Show up alone and pretend everything's fine while he parades his new fiancée around Paris? I don't know yet. But she was already opening her laptop, already searching flights. She booked a ticket to Paris that night. One way. No return date. Like maybe if she didn't plan the ending, she could convince herself this wasn't the worst idea she'd ever had. The flight left in 2 weeks. She had 14 days to figure out how to walk into her ex-boyfriend's wedding without falling apart. Eek. Paris hit her like cold water the moment she stepped off the plane at Charles de Gaulle. Gray morning light, rain-slicked pavement, the smell of espresso and cigarettes drifting through terminal windows. Vivian dragged her suitcase through customs, feeling like she was moving through a dream she couldn't wake up from. She'd been to Paris once before, with Ethan. 3 years ago when everything still felt possible. They'd walked along the Seine holding hands, gotten lost in the Marais, made promises in tiny hotel rooms that turned out to mean nothing. Coming back alone felt like visiting a crime scene. Vivian checked into a small hotel in the 6th arrondissement, showered off 16 hours of travel, and forced herself to leave the room before she could spiral. The wedding was in 2 days. She needed to at least pretend she had a plan. She found a cafe near Luxembourg Gardens and ordered coffee she couldn't taste. Sat there rehearsing fake, confident speeches in her head. "Oh, Ethan, congratulations. She seems lovely. I've been great, actually, seeing someone new. Very happy." Every version sounded desperate, even in her imagination. "I just need someone to walk in with me," she whispered to herself, staring into cold coffee. "Just one person, so I don't look pathetic." A calm voice answered from behind a newspaper 2 tables over. "I have a suit." Vivian's head snapped up. The man lowering the newspaper was maybe 35, Korean, wearing an immaculate charcoal coat that probably cost more than her rent, dark eyes that didn't blink enough. A face that would have been handsome if it wasn't so carefully controlled, it looked almost unreal. "Excuse me?" Vivian managed. He folded the newspaper with precise movements and stood, walked over to her table without asking permission, and sat down across from her like they'd planned this meeting. "You need someone to accompany you somewhere," he said. Not a question. "I have appropriate attire. Problem solved." Vivian stared at him. "Are you serious right now? Do I look like someone who makes jokes?" He didn't. He looked like someone who'd never made a joke in his entire life. "I don't even know you," Vivian said slowly. "You could be a serial killer." "I'm not." He signaled the waiter without breaking eye contact with her, ordered in perfect French, then switched back to English. "My name is Kang Min Seo. I'm in Paris on business. I have 3 days free before my next meeting. Your problem interests me more than sightseeing." That's possibly the weirdest thing anyone's ever said to me. "You're going to a wedding where you'll see someone who hurt you," Minseo said calmly. "You want to appear unaffected. You need a companion who won't ask questions or expect emotional reciprocation. I can provide that." Vivian's throat felt tight. "How do you... You've been sitting here for 40 minutes practicing the same conversation with yourself. Your phone is face down on the table, but you keep checking it like you're expecting a message that won't come. And you're gripping that coffee cup hard enough your knuckles are white." He tilted his head slightly. "You're either preparing for a wedding or a funeral. The dress hanging in your hotel room window is burgundy, so probably not a funeral." She followed his gaze. Her hotel was visible across the street. He'd been watching her. Most women would have run. Vivian just felt tired. "Why would you do this?" she asked quietly. "Help a stranger with something this pathetic?" For the first time, something almost human flickered across Minseo's face. "Because watching powerful people squirm is one of my few genuine pleasures," he said, "and I suspect whoever hurt you is exactly the type who deserves to squirm. You don't know anything about him. I know he's the kind of man who breaks someone like you and then invites you to watch him celebrate his upgrade." Minseo leaned back slightly. "That tells me everything I need." Vivian should have said no, should have thanked him politely and left, should have done literally anything except what she did next. "What's the catch?" Minseo smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "No fake love story," he said. "People can smell desperation. We attend as acquaintances. Nothing more. You introduce me however you want. I stay close enough to make an impression. We leave when you're ready. Simple." Why do I get the feeling nothing about you is simple? Because you're smarter than you're pretending to be right now. The waiter brought Minseo's espresso. He drank it in 2 swallows and stood. "The wedding is in 2 days," he said. "Meet me tomorrow evening at Le Comptoir, 6 o'clock. We'll walk through what to expect." "I haven't agreed to anything." "Yes, you have." He buttoned his coat. "You agreed the moment you didn't tell me to leave." He walked away before Vivian could argue. She sat there for another hour, staring at nothing, wondering what the hell she'd just gotten herself into. Vivian almost didn't show up to Le Comptoir the next evening. She stood outside the restaurant for 10 minutes, phone in hand, composing and deleting text messages to Casey, asking what the hell she was thinking, trusting a complete stranger who might actually be a serial killer. Then Minseo appeared beside her so quietly she jumped. "You're early," he observed. "I'm rethinking my entire life," Vivian corrected. "That's fair." He opened the restaurant door. "But you're still here." Le Comptoir was the kind of Paris restaurant that didn't advertise because it didn't need to. Small, candlelit, the type of place where everyone spoke in low voices and the waiters remembered your name after one visit. Minseo had reserved a corner table. They sat. Vivian ordered wine she definitely needed. Minseo ordered sparkling water. You don't drink? She asked. Not often. Why not? I prefer staying in control. Something about the way he said it made Vivian's skin prickle. Not fear exactly, just awareness, like sitting across from a predator that had decided not to bite yet. Tell me about him, Minseo said once their drinks arrived. The man you're trying not to care about anymore. Ethan. His name still tasted wrong in her mouth. We were together 2 years, lived together for 1, talked about marriage, kids, the whole script. Then one day he sent me a text saying he needed space to figure himself out. 3 lines, no explanation, blocked my number before I could respond. Coward. Yeah. And now he's marrying someone else. 6 months after he left me. Vivian drained half her wine. Her name is Sophia. She works in tech. Probably brilliant and successful, and everything I'm apparently not. You're making assumptions. I looked her up on Instagram. She's perfect. Minseo studied her carefully. What do you actually want from attending this wedding? Vivian had been asking herself that question for 2 weeks straight. I don't want him back, she said slowly. I'm not that stupid. I need him to see that I'm okay, that I didn't spend 8 months falling apart, that leaving me wasn't this devastating thing he gets to feel guilty about for the rest of his life. She laughed bitterly. God, that sounds insane, doesn't it? It sounds human. Human is just another word for messy. Yes, Minseo's expression didn't change. But messy is honest. They ordered food. Vivian barely tasted any of it, kept expecting Minseo to interrogate her more, but he just let silence sit between them like it didn't bother him at all. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. Your turn, she said. Who are you really? And don't give me the businessman in Paris line. Nobody dresses like you or moves like you unless they're into something complicated. Minseo set down his fork with careful precision. I run an import-export company based in Seoul, he said calmly. We handle high-value acquisitions across Asia and Europe. That's still the business line. Yes. So what's the truth? He met her eyes directly. No flinching, no hesitation. I'm involved in activities most governments consider illegal, he said. I have associations with people your country would call criminals. I make decisions that hurt people sometimes, and I've never lost sleep over any of it. Most women would have run. Vivian just poured more wine. Are you trying to scare me away? I'm trying to be honest. Minseo leaned back slightly. If you walk into that wedding with me, people will notice. Not because of you, because of who I am and what I represent. Are you prepared for that? I thought we were just attending as acquaintances. We are, but I can't make myself invisible, and I won't pretend to be someone harmless just to make you comfortable. Vivian should have walked away, should have thanked him and left and shown up to the wedding alone like a normal person dealing with normal heartbreak. Instead, she said, Will it bother Ethan? Minseo almost smiled. Probably. Then I don't care who you are. Parts. They spent the next day wandering Paris like tourists who'd somehow ended up in the wrong guidebook. Minseo took her to places that didn't appear on maps, a bookstore hidden in a basement near the Sorbonne that only opened after midnight, a restaurant in the 18th arrondissement where armed men stood outside smoking cigarettes and pretending not to watch every person who entered, a garden behind a private mansion where the gates had no signs and the silence felt older than the city itself. Everywhere they went, people recognized him. Not obviously. No one approached. But Vivian watched strangers' expressions change when Minseo entered a room, watched confident men suddenly avoid eye contact, watched waiters move faster and speak quieter. They're afraid of you, she said quietly as they walked along the Seine after dark. Yes. Does that bother you? No. Why not? Minseo was quiet for a long moment. They passed beneath streetlights reflecting gold across black water. Rain had started falling again, soft and cold. Fear is honest, he finally said. People lie with their words all the time, but fear tells the truth. That's a lonely way to live. I didn't say it was pleasant. I said it was honest. Vivian stopped walking, turned to face him beneath rain and streetlights and the weight of a city that had seen 1,000 heartbreaks exactly like hers. Why are you really doing this? She asked. And don't tell me it's because you enjoy making people squirm. There's more to it. Minseo looked at her for a long time before answering. 6 years ago, someone I cared about was humiliated publicly by a man who thought he was untouchable, he said quietly. I wasn't there to stand beside her. By the time I found out, she'd already disappeared. I never saw her again. What happened to her? I don't know. I looked for 2 years, found nothing. Something cracked in Vivian's chest, because for the first time she understood what she was seeing in Kang Minseo's carefully controlled expression. Regret. The kind that doesn't heal. I can't fix what happened to her, Minseo continued. But I can make sure you don't walk into that wedding alone. That's worth 3 days of my time. Vivian felt tears burning behind her eyes, but refused to let them fall. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet. You might hate me by tomorrow. Why? Because when we walk through those doors, I won't be the polite stranger anymore. I'll be exactly who I am, and that version isn't kind. Good, Vivian said. Kind hasn't gotten me anywhere. Mom. The morning of the wedding, Vivian woke up at 5 a.m. shaking. Cold sweat. Racing heart. The kind of panic that made breathing feel optional. She sat on the bathroom floor of her hotel room, trying to remember the therapy techniques she'd learned 8 months ago. Count to 10. Name 5 things you can see. Ground yourself in the present. Nothing worked. She was about to text Minseo and cancel everything when her phone buzzed. A message from him. Fear is just your body preparing to survive something difficult. Let it prepare. Then walk anyway. Vivian read it 3 times. Then she stood up, showered, and started getting ready. The burgundy dress fit perfectly. She'd bought it specifically for this. Something bold enough to make a statement, but elegant enough not to look desperate. Deep neckline, long sleeves, silk that moved like water. She looked like someone who'd moved on, even if she hadn't. Minseo picked her up at 4. He was wearing a black suit tailored so precisely it looked dangerous, hair styled back, a watch that probably cost more than her entire year's rent. He looked like exactly what he was. Powerful. Untouchable. Lethal. You clean up nice, Vivian said, trying to keep her voice steady. So do you. He opened the car door and Ready? No. Perfect. The best decisions are always terrifying. The drive to the cathedral took 20 minutes through Paris traffic. Neither of them spoke. Vivian watched the city blur past, trying not to think about what came next. When they arrived, Minseo's driver opened the door, and Vivian saw the cathedral looming ahead like a beautiful monument to everything she'd lost. Her hands started shaking. Minseo noticed immediately. He didn't take her hand or offer false comfort, just leaned slightly closer and said, You don't owe anyone proof. Not him, not them, not even yourself. But you already came this far. Turning around now just means you'll wonder what would have happened if you'd been brave for 5 more minutes. Vivian looked at him. Is that supposed to be inspiring? It's supposed to be true. She took a deep breath, then another. Then she opened the car door and stepped onto the street. The cathedral entrance was 50 feet away. Guests were already filing inside wearing expensive clothes and fake smiles. Vivian recognized a few faces from Ethan's corporate world, people who'd stopped texting her the day he left. Her feet felt welded to the sidewalk. Minseo appeared beside her. Didn't touch her. Just stood close enough that she could feel his presence like a shield. Last chance to run, he said quietly. If I run now, I'll hate myself forever. Then walk. Vivian took 1 step forward, then another. By the 3rd step, Minseo had fallen into position slightly behind her right shoulder, close enough to be noticed, far enough to look professional. They reached the cathedral doors. Vivian's hand touched the handle. Every instinct screamed at her to turn around. Instead, she pushed the door open and walked straight into the ceremony already in progress. The effect was immediate and devastating. Every head in the cathedral turned at once. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Even the string quartet playing Pachelbel's canon stumbled slightly before recovering. Vivian Laurent walked down the center aisle in burgundy silk with her chin up and her expression perfectly neutral, and beside her walked Kang Minseo, looking like violence wrapped in expensive fabric. At the altar, Ethan Vale forgot his bride existed. His face went white, then red. His mouth opened slightly like he wanted to speak but couldn't remember how. The bride, Sophia, beautiful in white lace and denial, noticed her groom's expression and followed his gaze. Saw Vivian, saw Minseo. Understood immediately that something had just shifted in the room that couldn't be shifted back. Vivian never looked at Ethan. Not once. She simply walked to the back row on the bride's side, chose a seat with perfect sightlines, and sat down beside the most feared man in the room like she'd already survived worse than everyone there combined. The ceremony restarted, but it no longer belonged to the bride and groom. It belonged to the woman in burgundy and the monster who'd decided she was worth protecting. And somewhere between the vows and the readings and the forced applause, Vivian realized something that changed everything. Walking into this cathedral beside Kang Minseo no longer felt like revenge. It felt like the first honest thing she'd done in 8 months. The ceremony ended. Guests filed out toward the reception. Vivian stood slowly, smoothing her dress, preparing herself for whatever came next. Ethan was pushing through the crowd toward her, and he looked absolutely terrified. Ethan Vale moved through the crowd like a man underwater, pushing past congratulating guests without acknowledging a single word they said. His face had gone from white to red to something closer to gray. Sweat beaded along his hairline despite the cathedral's cool air. Vivian watched him approach and felt absolutely nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, not even the vindictive pleasure she'd imagined feeling during all those sleepless nights back in Manhattan. Just emptiness. Minseo shifted slightly beside her. Not obviously protective, just present. His hand rested loosely at his side, but Vivian noticed the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes tracked every person within 10 feet of them. Vivian. Ethan's voice cracked on her name. He stopped 3 feet away like he'd hit an invisible wall. I wasn't sure you'd actually come. You invited me. Vivian's voice came out calmer than she felt. Hope you've moved on, remember? Ethan flinched, glanced at Minseo, then back to her. Can we talk? Alone? No. The word landed between them like a slap. Ethan's jaw tightened. 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking. You don't get to ask me for anything anymore. Vivian smoothed her dress unnecessarily, buying herself time to keep her hands from shaking. You said everything you needed to say 8 months ago. 3 lines. Very efficient. That's not fair. Guess? Fair? The word came out sharper than she intended. Several nearby guests turned to look. Vivian lowered her voice but didn't soften it. You blocked my number before I could respond. You packed up your half of the apartment while I was at work and left your key on the kitchen counter. You didn't answer a single email or text for 6 months. And now you want to talk about fair? Ethan opened his mouth, closed it, looked genuinely lost for maybe the first time since she'd known him. Sophia appeared at his elbow wearing her wedding dress and an expression that could have cut glass. She was even more beautiful up close. Delicate features, perfect skin, the kind of woman who probably never ate cereal from the box at 2 a.m. wearing the same shirt for 3 days straight. Ethan, her voice was quiet but sharp. They're waiting for us at the reception. I need a minute. You need to introduce me to your guest. Sophia's eyes fixed on Vivian with the cold assessment of someone used to sizing up competition. Since she made such a memorable entrance, Vivian met her gaze directly. Vivian Laurent, congratulations on your wedding. Sophia Lynn, no warmth in the introduction. Ethan's mentioned you? I'm sure he has. He said you were having a difficult time moving on. The words hung in the air like poison. Vivian felt Minseo go completely still beside her. Not tense, not angry, just utterly motionless in a way that made the air feel thinner. She smiled slowly. Did he? That's interesting, because I don't remember asking him to narrate my life to strangers. Sophia's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. Uncertainty, maybe. Or the first crack in whatever story Ethan had been telling her. We should go, Ethan said quickly, touching Sophia's elbow. The photographer's waiting. In a moment. Sophia pulled her arm away from him without looking, still watching Vivian. Who's your date? I'm not her date, Minseo said quietly. His voice cut through the tension like a blade through water. Everyone turned to look at him properly for the first time. He hadn't raised his volume, hadn't changed his expression, but something in the way he spoke made the entire group go silent. "I'm a business associate," Minseo continued calmly. "Miss Laurent needed a companion for the evening. I was available, that's all." "What kind of business?" Sophia asked. "The kind that doesn't discuss itself at weddings." Ethan's face had gone white again. He was staring at Minseo like he'd just recognized something terrible. "You're Korean?" "Yes." "From Seoul?" "Yes." "What's your name?" Minseo smiled. It looked like something carved from ice. "Kang Minseo." The reaction was immediate. Ethan actually stepped backward. Sophia's hand went to her mouth. 3 nearby guests, who'd been pretending not to listen, suddenly found reasons to move away quickly. "Jesus Christ," Ethan whispered. "Vivian, what the hell are you doing?" Vivian looked at him blankly. "I have no idea what you're talking about. You brought a—" Ethan caught himself, lowered his voice to barely above a whisper. "Do you have any idea who this man is?" "A business associate. He just told you. He's a fucking criminal. He runs one of the largest organized crime operations in Asia. There are Interpol files on him thicker than phone books." Vivian turned to Minseo. "Is that true?" "Some of it." Minseo's expression remained perfectly neutral. "Though I've never actually seen the Interpol files, so I can't comment on their thickness." "This isn't funny," Ethan hissed. He grabbed Vivian's arm. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but you need to leave. Now, before—" Minseo's hand shot out and gripped Ethan's wrist. The movement was so fast, Vivian barely registered it. 1 second, Ethan was touching her. The next second, Minseo had his wrist in a grip that made Ethan's face twist in pain. "Don't touch her," Minseo said quietly. "Let go of me." When you let go of her, Ethan released Vivian's arm. Minseo released Ethan's wrist. The entire exchange took maybe 3 seconds, but the atmosphere had shifted into something dangerous. Sophia was staring at her new husband. "What's happening?" "Nothing." Ethan rubbed his wrist, not taking his eyes off Minseo. "We're leaving. Now." "Not until someone explains, Sophia, now." Something in his voice made her stop arguing. They turned and walked away together, Sophia's white dress trailing behind her like a ghost. Ethan's hand pressed against the small of her back in a gesture that looked more like steering than affection. Vivian stood there breathing hard, her pulse hammering in her throat. "Are you all right?" Minseo asked quietly. "I don't know." Her hands were shaking. She pressed them against her sides. "What just happened?" "He tried to control you. I stopped him." "By grabbing him at his own wedding?" "Yes." "That's insane." "Probably." Vivian turned to look at him. "You actually are everything he said, aren't you? Interpol files and everything?" Minseo met her eyes. "Yes." "Why didn't you tell me?" "I did." "You chose not to ask follow-up questions." "I thought you were exaggerating." "I don't exaggerate." A hysterical laugh bubbled up in Vivian's throat. She swallowed it down. "I just walked into my ex-boyfriend's wedding with an actual mafia boss. Yes. This is the worst decision I've ever made." "Possibly." Minseo glanced toward the cathedral entrance where the last guests were filing out. "Do you want to leave?" Vivian thought about it. Actually considered just walking away right now, getting on a plane back to New York, pretending this entire disaster had never happened. Then she remembered Sophia's voice. "He said you were having a difficult time moving on." "No," she said firmly. "We're going to the reception." "Are you sure?" "Ethan thinks I'm broken. He told his new wife I can't move on. I'm not giving him the satisfaction of watching me run." Minseo studied her face carefully. "That's pride talking, not logic." "I don't care. Pride gets people hurt." "Then I guess I'll get hurt." Vivian straightened her shoulders. "Are you coming or not?" For a moment she thought he'd refuse. Thought he'd finally show some common sense and tell her this was a terrible idea. Instead, he offered his arm. "The car's waiting." The reception was being held at a private mansion in the 8th arrondissement, the kind of venue that required you to know someone who knew someone just to get on the waiting list. Vivian and Minseo arrived 20 minutes after the bride and groom, fashionably late by accident. The entrance hall was all marble floors and crystal chandeliers and ice sculptures shaped like swans. Waiters moved through crowds carrying champagne and hors d'oeuvres. string quartet playing Vivaldi in the corner. The whole scene looked like it had been ripped from a magazine spread about people with too much money and not enough problems. Vivian felt completely out of place, until she walked in beside Minseo and watched the room shift. It was subtle at first, a businessman mid-conversation glancing over and losing his train of thought, a woman in diamonds doing a double take, the string quartet actually hitting a wrong note. Then the whispers started. Vivian couldn't hear the words, but she could see them spreading like ripples across water. People leaning toward each other, hands covering mouths, eyes darting between her and Minseo, and the entrance like they were trying to solve an equation that didn't make sense. "They know who you are," Vivian murmured. "Some of them." Minseo accepted 2 glasses of champagne from a passing waiter and handed one to Vivian. "The ones in finance, the ones who do business in Asia, the ones who've heard stories." "What kind of stories?" "The kind that make people nervous." A tall man in his 60s approached them carefully. Silver hair, expensive suit, the kind of confidence that came from decades of being the most powerful person in any room. Until now. "Mr. Kang." The man's voice was steady, but his handshake wasn't. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Mr. Chen." Minseo's tone was perfectly polite. "How's the Seoul project progressing?" "Very well, thanks to your facilitation." "I'm glad to hear it." Chen's eyes flicked to Vivian. "And your companion?" "Miss Laurent, a friend." The word friend carried weight Vivian didn't understand. Chen's expression changed slightly, became more careful. "A pleasure to meet you, Miss Laurent." He shook her hand gently. "Any friend of Mr. Kang's is someone I'm honored to know." He walked away before Vivian could respond. "What was that about?" she asked quietly. "Business." "What kind of business involves being honored to meet someone's friend?" "The kind where people need to know who's protected." Vivian's stomach dropped. "Protected?" "You're standing beside me publicly. That means something in certain circles." "I didn't ask to be protected." "I know." Minseo sipped his champagne. "But you are anyway." More people approached over the next 20 minutes. Some Vivian recognized from Ethan's world. Tech executives, finance people, a venture capitalist she'd met once at a company party who'd completely ignored her then and now couldn't stop smiling nervously. None of them wanted to talk to her. They wanted to acknowledge Minseo, to be seen speaking with him, to make sure he knew they existed. Vivian stood there watching powerful people turn into anxious children around a man who barely spoke and never smiled. "Do you enjoy this?" she asked during a brief moment alone. "Watching them squirm?" "Sometimes." "Does it ever get old?" "No." "That's sad." Minseo looked at her. "Why?" "Because it means you've never met anyone who wasn't afraid of you." Something flickered across his face too quickly for her to read. "That's not entirely true." "Who?" "You." Vivian blinked. "I'm terrified of you." "No, you're not. You're uncertain about the situation. That's different from fear." "How do you know the difference?" "Afraid people don't argue with me. They agree immediately and leave as quickly as possible." Minseo set down his empty glass. "You've done neither." Before Vivian could respond, Ethan appeared at her elbow, looking like he'd aged 5 years in the past hour. "We need to talk," he said. No greeting, no preamble. "Now, we already talked. Privately, without your—" He glared at Minseo. "Associate. Anything you need to say to me, you can say in front of him." "Vivian, please." The desperation in his voice almost worked. Almost made her remember the version of Ethan she'd fallen in love with 3 years ago. The one who'd seemed gentle and thoughtful and capable of seeing her. But that version didn't exist anymore. Maybe it never had. "Fine," she said. 5 minutes. Minseo didn't move. "I'll be right here." Ethan led her out onto a terrace overlooking Paris. The city spread below them like scattered diamonds. Cold wind cut through Vivian's dress, but she refused to shiver. The moment they were alone, Ethan's composure cracked completely. "What the hell are you doing?" His voice was raw, angry, scared. "Do you have any idea how dangerous this is?" "I'm attending your wedding, like you invited me to." "Don't play stupid, you know what I mean. Enlighten me." Kang Min-seo isn't just some businessman, Vivian. He's connected to every major criminal organization between Seoul and Moscow. People who cross him disappear, literally disappear. Sounds like someone you shouldn't grab at his own wedding reception. I didn't grab him, I grabbed you. Ethan caught himself. That's not the point. The point is, you're in over your head with someone extremely dangerous, and you're too proud to admit it. Vivian laughed. Actually laughed. I'm too proud? That's rich coming from the man who sent a 3-line breakup text and then invited his ex to watch him get married. I invited you because I thought... Ethan ran his hand through his hair. I thought enough time had passed. I thought we could be adults about this. You thought I'd show up alone and miserable so you could feel better about what you did to me. That's not true, isn't it? Vivian stepped closer. Tell me honestly, Ethan, when you wrote "Hope you've moved on" at the bottom of that invitation, what did you actually hope? That I'd found someone new, or that I was still waiting for you to realize you made a mistake? Ethan's silence was answer enough. That's what I thought. Vivian turned to go. I did make a mistake. The words stopped her cold. She turned back slowly. What did you just say? Ethan looked at her with something that might have been real regret. Leaving you. The way I did it. All of it. I was a coward. I panicked because things were getting serious and I wasn't sure I could be the person you needed me to be. So I ran. And now? Now I'm marrying someone else and wondering if I just traded one set of doubts for another. Vivian felt something crack in her chest, not her heart. That had already broken. Something else. Some final thread of connection that had still been tying her to him. You don't get to tell me that, she said quietly. Not today. Not ever. I know, I'm sorry. Stop apologizing. You don't get to do that either. Her voice shook, but she kept it steady. You made your choice. You chose to leave. You chose to move on. You chose to marry someone else. Those are your decisions, and you have to live with them. You don't get to unload your regrets on me just because seeing me with someone else made you realize what you threw away. Vivian, I spent 8 months thinking I wasn't enough for you, that somehow I'd failed to be whatever you needed. And you know what the worst part is? I still don't know what I did wrong, because you never told me. You just left. Tears were burning in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of him. You didn't do anything wrong, Ethan said quietly. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It was never about you not being enough. It was about me being too weak to handle how much I loved you. The confession landed between them like broken glass. Vivian stared at him. You're telling me this now? On your wedding day? I know the timing is unforgivable. Her voice came out harder than she intended. You had 8 months to say this. 8 months to call or text or show up at my door and tell me the truth. But you didn't. You hid. And now you're married to someone else and suddenly you want to clear your conscience? I thought I was doing the right thing. By lying to both of us? By letting you go so you could find someone better. I didn't want someone better. The words exploded out of her. Several guests inside turned to look through the glass doors. Vivian lowered her voice but couldn't soften it. I wanted you, the actual you, weak and scared and imperfect. I would have taken all of it, but you never gave me that chance. Ethan looked destroyed. I'm sorry. Stop saying that. What do you want me to say? Nothing. I don't want you to say anything. I want you to go back inside to your wife and your wedding and your life that doesn't include me anymore. And I want you to stop pretending you ever cared about what I needed. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, Ethan. You taught me that. She turned and walked back inside before he could respond. Min-seo was exactly where she'd left him, standing near the bar, watching the room like a predator cataloging prey. He saw her face and his expression shifted into something almost gentle. What happened? He asked quietly. He told me he made a mistake leaving me. Vivian's voice sounded hollow even to herself. On his wedding day, while his wife is 20 feet away cutting their cake. What did you say? That it was too late. Was it? Vivian looked up at him. Yes, because even if he meant it, even if he really does regret everything, I don't want him anymore. I don't even know if I ever really had him. The version of Ethan I loved probably never existed outside my imagination. Minseo was quiet for a moment. Then, "That's the most honest thing you've said since we met. Does that make me pathetic? It makes you human." A waiter passed by with champagne. Vivian grabbed 2 glasses and drank one immediately. The alcohol burned going down. "I need to leave," she said. "Right now. Before I do something I'll regret." "Like what?" "Like throwing this champagne in his face, or telling his wife her new husband just confessed he still loves his ex, or—" She caught herself. "I just need to go." "All right." Minseo didn't argue, didn't ask questions, just placed his hand lightly against her lower back and guided her toward the exit. They made it halfway across the room before Sophia stepped directly into their path. She'd changed from her wedding dress into something simpler. Cream-colored silk. Hair down. She looked younger this way, more real, more dangerous. "Leaving already?" Her voice was pleasant, but her eyes were sharp. "The party's just getting started." "I have an early flight," Vivian lied. "That's a shame." Sophia's gaze flicked to Minseo, then back. "I was hoping we could talk, woman to woman." "I don't think that's a good idea." "I do." Sophia smiled. It looked genuine. It probably wasn't. "Just 5 minutes, please." Vivian glanced at Minseo. He gave the slightest shrug. "Your choice." "Fine," Vivian said. 5 minutes." Sophia led her to a small library off the main ballroom. Books floor to ceiling, leather chairs. A fireplace that probably hadn't been used in decades. The moment the door closed, Sophia's pleasant expression vanished. "How long were you sleeping with my husband?" she asked calmly. Vivian's brain stuttered. "What?" "You heard me. I haven't seen Ethan in 8 months. We haven't spoken, texted, or—" "I don't believe you." "I don't care what you believe." Sophia stepped closer. "He's been different for weeks. Distracted, guilty. And then you show up looking like that with a man like that, and he can barely function. So I'll ask you again, how long?" "Listen to me carefully," Vivian said slowly. "I am not sleeping with your husband. I have not slept with your husband since he ended our relationship 8 months ago via text message. Whatever guilt he's feeling has nothing to do with me and everything to do with the fact that he's a coward who runs away from difficult conversations." Sophia's expression didn't change. "Then why are you here?" "Because he invited me." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one you're getting." They stared at each other across the small room, 2 women connected only by the man who'd hurt them both. Finally, Sophia said, "Do you still love him?" The question landed like a punch. Vivian wanted to lie, wanted to say no immediately and convincingly, wanted to be the kind of woman who'd moved on completely and felt nothing. But she was so tired of lying. "I don't know," she admitted quietly. "I loved who I thought he was, but I don't think that person ever really existed. So maybe I'm just mourning someone I made up in my head." Something shifted in Sophia's expression. Not sympathy exactly. Understanding, maybe. "He told me you had a breakdown after he left," Sophia said carefully. "That you called him dozens of times. That you showed up at his office. That you couldn't accept it was over." Vivian felt ice spread through her veins. "I called him twice. He never answered. I never went to his office. Everything he told you is a lie." "Why would he lie?" "Because it's easier than admitting he's the kind of man who ghosts someone he claimed to love and then rewrites history to make himself look better." Sophia's hand went to her necklace, twisted it unconsciously. "He said you were fragile, that leaving you broke something in you that couldn't be fixed. And you believed him." "I wanted to believe him." Sophia's voice cracked slightly. "Because if you were crazy and obsessive, then it meant he left for a good reason. It meant I wasn't just the convenient replacement for someone he actually loved." The confession hung between them. Vivian felt something unexpected. Pity. "I'm not crazy," she said quietly. "I'm just someone who got hurt by a man who doesn't know how to tell the truth. The same man you just married." Sophia sank into one of the leather chairs. "This is my wedding day." "I know. I'm supposed to be happy." "I know. But all I can think about is whether he looked at me the way he looked at you when you walked into that cathedral." Vivian sat down in the chair across from her. "Do you love him?" "I thought I did." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I have." Sophia looked up. "Do you think I made a mistake?" I think only you can answer that. That's not helpful. I'm not here to help you. I'm here because your husband invited his ex-girlfriend to his wedding, and I was stupid enough to show up. They sat in silence for a long moment. The party sounds filtered through the door, music, laughter, people celebrating a future that suddenly felt a lot less certain. Who is he? Sophia finally asked. The man you came with. Exactly who Ethan thinks he is. That doesn't scare you? Terrifies me, Vivian admitted. But at least he's honest about what he is. That's more than I can say for most people. Sophia studied her carefully. Are you sleeping with him? No. Do you want to? The question caught Vivian off guard because she hadn't let herself think about it, hadn't let herself acknowledge the way Minseo looked at her sometimes, the way his presence made her feel safe and dangerous simultaneously. I don't know, she said honestly. He looks at you like you're the only person in the room. He looks at everyone like that. It's a predator thing. No. Sophia shook her head. It's different with you. I noticed it immediately. The way he positioned himself beside you, the way he watched Ethan when he touched your arm. That's not business. That's personal. Vivian's heart was beating too fast. You're imagining things. Am I? Before Vivian could answer, the library door opened. Minseo stood in the doorway looking completely calm except for his eyes. His eyes looked like murder. We're leaving, he said quietly. Now. What's wrong? Vivian stood quickly. Nothing that concerns you. Minseo's gaze shifted to Sophia. Congratulations on your marriage, Mrs. Vale. I hope it brings you everything you're looking for. The words sounded like a threat. Sophia stood slowly. Did something happen? Your husband made a phone call he shouldn't have made. Minseo's voice remained perfectly level. To people he shouldn't have contacted. About me. Vivian's stomach dropped. What kind of phone call? The kind that has consequences. Minseo, we're leaving, now. This time it wasn't a suggestion. Vivian followed him out of the library, through the ballroom, past staring guests and whispered conversations. Ethan was nowhere to be seen. Neither were half the security guards who'd been stationed at the doors earlier. They made it to the entrance hall when 3 men in dark suits stepped into their path. Not wedding guests. Something else. Minseo stopped walking. Vivian nearly crashed into his back. Mr. Kang, the center man said in accented English. French, maybe. We need you to come with us. On whose authority? People who prefer not to be named. That's not how this works. Tonight it is. The tension in the entrance hall shifted into something deadly. The few remaining guests scattered immediately, smart people who recognized danger when they saw it. Vivian's hand found Minseo's arm. What's happening? Stay behind me, he said quietly. Don't move. Don't speak. Minseo, do what I say. The center man smiled. Your friend should leave. This doesn't concern her. Everything concerning me concerns her. Minseo's voice dropped lower, colder. So if you have something to say it now before this becomes a problem neither of us wants. Mr. Vale contacted certain parties with concerns about your presence here tonight. Parties who have invested interest in maintaining peace in Paris. Ethan called the French police? Not exactly. Understanding hit Vivian like ice water. He called criminals. He told them you were here. The man's smile widened. Mr. Vale was very specific about who Mr. Kang associates with, and very concerned about his new wife's safety. Certain people felt obligated to respond to those concerns. This is insane, Vivian said. He's using criminals to remove a wedding guest? He's using resources, the man corrected. Just like Mr. Kang does every day. Minseo hadn't moved, hadn't even blinked, but Vivian felt the danger radiating off him like heat. Tell your employers I'll leave voluntarily, Minseo said calmly. But if anyone touches me or the woman I came with, what happens next will require more cleanup than they're prepared for. Is that a threat? It's a promise. The 3 men exchanged glances. Some silent communication passed between them. Finally, the center man nodded once. Your car is waiting outside. I suggest you use it. They stepped aside. Minseo took Vivian's hand and walked past them without another word. The moment they were outside in the cold Paris air, Vivian started shaking. Not from cold, from adrenaline and fear and the terrifying realization of what almost just happened. Minseo's driver had the car door open before they reached the curb. Minseo guided Vivian inside first, then slid in beside her. The door closed. The locks engaged. The car pulled away from the mansion like they were fleeing a crime scene, which, Vivian realized, they kind of were. "Are you all right?" Minseo asked. "What just happened?" "Your ex-boyfriend decided I was dangerous enough to warrant outside intervention. So he called the French Mafia?" "Something like that. And they just let us leave?" "They know better than to start a war over a wedding." Vivian's hands were still shaking. She pressed them against her knees. "This is insane, all of it. The wedding, the confrontation, the—" She laughed hysterically. "I just wanted to prove I'd moved on, that's all. Just show up looking put together and leave. That was the entire plan." Plans rarely survive contact with reality. That's not helpful. It's true. They drove in silence for several minutes. Paris blurred past the windows, city lights reflecting off rain-slicked streets. Finally, Vivian said, "Thank you." "For what?" "For not leaving me there, for—" She struggled to find words. "For everything concerning you, concerning me." Minseo looked at her, really looked at her. Not the careful assessment he'd been using since they met, something more direct, more honest. "This stopped being pretend for me a long time ago," he said quietly. Vivian felt her breath catch, because somewhere between Paris nights and quiet conversations and walking through a cathedral like they owned the world, something had shifted. She wasn't falling for a mafia boss. She'd already fallen. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Somewhere safe." "Safe doesn't exist in your world." "No," Minseo admitted, "but I can get close." The car turned down a narrow street Vivian didn't recognize, stopped in front of a building with no signs or visible entrances. Minseo's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression went completely neutral. "What is it?" Vivian asked. "A message from the people who just let us leave." "What does it say?" Minseo handed her the phone. The message was in French. Vivian's high school education was just enough to translate. "Mr. Vale paid us to remove you from Paris. We declined. But others won't be so reasonable. Leave the city by morning or the next conversation won't end peacefully." Vivian's hand started shaking again. "They're threatening you. They're warning me. There's a difference." "What are you going to do?" Minseo took his phone back, deleted the message, looked at her with eyes that had gone completely cold. "Leave Paris," he said calmly. "Tonight, before this gets worse." "What about me?" "You come with me." "Where?" "Seoul." The word landed between them like a grenade. "You want me to fly to Korea with you, tonight, because my ex-boyfriend sicked the French criminal underground on you at his own wedding." "Yes, that's crazy." "Probably. I have a life in New York, a job, an apartment." "I know. I can't just disappear to Seoul because—" Vivian caught herself. "Why are you even asking me to come?" Minseo was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached out and gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was so careful, so intimate, so completely at odds with everything else about him. "Because staying in Paris right now is dangerous," he said quietly, "and sending you back to New York alone while people who know your name and your connection to me are actively looking for leverage is even more dangerous. Seoul is the only place I can guarantee your safety." "For how long? Until I fix this." "And if you can't, I will." Vivian stared at him. This dangerous man who'd walked into her life 3 days ago and somehow become the only person she trusted. "This is insane," she whispered. "Yes. I'm going to regret this. Probably." She took a deep breath, then another. Then she looked into Kang Minseo's dark, unreadable eyes and made the most reckless decision of her entire life. "Okay," she said. "Seoul, tonight." Minseo's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Relief, maybe. Or something deeper. "Pack only what you need," he said. "We leave in 2 hours." The car pulled away from the curb, carrying them toward an airport and a future neither of them had planned. Behind them, Paris disappeared into the rain, and Ethan Vale stood on the balcony of his wedding reception watching the car vanish, his new wife crying in the library, and the consequences of his phone call spreading through the city like poison. He'd wanted to protect Sophia from Vivian's dangerous companion. Instead, he'd just started a war he didn't understand, and lost the only woman who'd ever really loved him. The private jet sat on the tarmac at Le Bourget Airport like a sleeping predator, all black paint and tinted windows reflecting runway lights. Vivian stood beside Menseo's car staring at it, her hastily packed suitcase heavy in her hand, reality finally catching up to adrenaline. She was about to fly to Seoul with a man she'd known for 3 days. A man currently wanted out of Paris by people who made their living hurting other people. A man who'd just told her the only safe place for her now was 12 time zones away in a country where she didn't speak the language or know a single person besides him. "Last chance," Menseo said quietly beside her. "I can have my driver take you to Charles de Gaulle instead. Commercial flight back to New York. You'll be home by tomorrow night." Vivian looked at him. His face was unreadable in the dim light, but she could see tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. Would I actually be safe there? Probably. That's not a yes. Nothing's certain. Menseo's jaw tightened slightly. "Ethan made phone calls, said my name to people who now know you were with me. Most of them won't care, but some might see you as leverage if they ever need it." Leverage for what? Things I'd rather not discuss in an airport parking lot. Vivian's hands were shaking again. She gripped her suitcase harder to hide it. "So my choices are fly to Korea with you or spend the rest of my life wondering if someone's going to grab me off a Manhattan street to get to you. Those aren't your only choices. What's the third option?" "I disappear from your life completely. Right now. You go home. We never contact each other again. Eventually people forget you were ever connected to me." The suggestion landed like a punch, because somewhere in the past 3 days, the idea of Menseo disappearing had become worse than the idea of flying to Seoul. "Would that actually work?" Vivian asked quietly. "Maybe." He looked at her directly. "But I don't want it to." "Why not?" "Because I'm selfish enough to want you safe and close enough that I can guarantee it myself." The honesty in his voice made Vivian's chest tight. She picked up her suitcase. "Seoul it is, then." Something almost like relief crossed Menseo's face. "You're sure?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." The jet's interior was exactly what Vivian expected, and somehow worse. Cream leather seats, polished wood panels, a bedroom visible through a doorway at the back. The kind of space that cost more per hour than most people made in a year. 2 men in dark suits sat near the cockpit. Security, maybe. Or pilots. Or both. They nodded at Menseo and completely ignored Vivian. She chose a seat by the window. Menseo sat across from her, pulling out his phone and typing rapidly in what looked like Korean. "How long is the flight?" Vivian asked. 11 hours direct. "And when we get there?" "My driver will take us to a safe location. You'll stay there until I resolve the Paris situation." "How long will that take?" "I don't know." "That's not comforting. It's honest." The engines started. Vivian felt the vibration through her seat, through her entire body. This was really happening. She was really leaving. Her phone buzzed. A text from Casey. "Please tell me you're on your way to the airport. Please tell me you're coming home and not doing something insane with the hot criminal." Vivian stared at the message, started typing a response, deleted it, started again. Finally, she just wrote, "I'm safe. I'll explain everything soon, I promise." She turned off her phone before Casey could respond. The jet started moving, picked up speed, lifted into the air with barely a shudder. Paris disappeared beneath them in a sprawl of lights that got smaller and smaller until they were just memories. Vivian pressed her forehead against the cold window and tried not to think about what she'd just done. She must have fallen asleep somewhere over Eastern Europe because she woke up disoriented with a blanket she didn't remember grabbing tucked around her shoulders. Menseo was still awake across from her, reading something on a tablet. He glanced up when she stirred. "How long was I out?" Vivian's voice came out rough. 4 hours. We're over Russia now." She sat up slowly. Her neck hurt from the angle she'd been sleeping at. "You should sleep too." "I don't sleep well on planes." "Why not?" "Control issues." Vivian almost smiled. "You can't control a plane crash." "Exactly. One of the security men brought coffee without being asked. Vivian accepted it gratefully, letting the heat seep into her hands. What happens when we land? She asked. My driver meets us. We go directly to a property I own in Gangnam. You stay there while I handle the Paris situation remotely. For how long? However long it takes. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now. Minseo set down his tablet. I'm sorry. I know this isn't what you signed up for. I signed up to attend a wedding and make my ex-boyfriend uncomfortable for an evening. Somehow it turned into international flight with a wanted criminal. I'm not wanted, technically. That's not reassuring. It's accurate. They fell into silence. Vivian sipped her coffee and watched darkness slide past the window. Somewhere below them, the world was happening. People were waking up, going to work, living normal lives that didn't involve fleeing countries in private jets. Can I ask you something? She said quietly. Yes. The woman you mentioned, the one who was humiliated 6 years ago, what was her name? Minseo's expression went completely neutral. Why? Because you've never said it. You talk about her like she's a ghost. She might be. I never found out what happened to her. But you looked. For 2 years. Something dark crossed his face. I used every resource I had, called in favors from people who owed me their lives. Nothing. She disappeared completely. What was her name? Vivian asked again. Minseo was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, Yuna. Her name was Yuna. Were you in love with her? I don't know. Maybe. I was 29 and stupid enough to think I could protect everyone I cared about. His jaw tightened. I was wrong. What happened to her? She worked for a man who made promises he never intended to keep. When she confronted him publicly about it, he humiliated her in front of dozens of business associates, made her look incompetent, destroyed her reputation. I found out 3 days later. By then she'd already left Seoul. And you never saw her again? No. Vivian set down her coffee cup. Is that why you helped me? Because I reminded you of her? At first, maybe. Minseo looked at her directly. But that's not why I'm still helping you. Why then? Because somewhere between Paris and this plane, you stopped being a stranger I was doing a favor for. What am I now? Minseo held her gaze. I don't know yet, but I'm trying to figure it out. The honesty in his voice made Vivian's pulse race. Before she could respond, Minseo's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his entire expression changed, went from almost soft to absolutely cold in half a second. What is it? Vivian asked. Message from my security team in Seoul. His voice had gone flat, empty. There's been a development. What kind of development? Instead of answering, Minseo turned his phone around so she could see the screen. It was a photo. Grainy security camera footage from what looked like an airport terminal. 2 people walking side by side through a crowded concourse. One of them was Ethan. The other was a woman Vivian didn't recognize. Asian, late 20s, expensive coat, the kind of face that looked carefully blank in the way people looked when they were trying not to be noticed. Who is that? Vivian asked. Her name is Jin Hae-won. She works for the Jade Circle. What's the Jade Circle? A Korean criminal syndicate that operates primarily in Seoul, Paris, and Los Angeles. Minseo's voice stayed eerily calm. They handle high-value trafficking, information, art, people, when the price is right. Vivian's stomach dropped. Why is Ethan with someone from a criminal syndicate? That's an excellent question. Minseo typed something on his phone. Seconds later, it rang. He answered in Korean, spoke rapidly for maybe 30 seconds, then switched to English. Where? Pause. When? Another pause. His expression got progressively darker. Keep eyes on them. Don't engage. I want to know everywhere they go and everyone they talk to. He ended the call. Vivian was gripping her coffee cup so hard her knuckles had gone white. What's happening? Your ex-boyfriend flew to Seoul 4 hours after we left Paris. Minseo's voice was completely controlled, but his eyes looked lethal. He landed 90 minutes ago. He's currently at the Grand Hyatt with Jin Hae-won. They checked into a suite together. I don't understand. Why would Ethan fly to Seoul? He just got married. Excellent question. Stop saying that and tell me what you're thinking. Minseo looked at her. How much do you know about Ethan's business? He works in tech, venture capital, or private equity or something. He was always vague about the details. Did he ever mention Asian markets? Sometimes. He traveled to Seoul a few times while we were together, said it was for work. Did he ever introduce you to anyone he worked with there? No, I asked to come with him once. He said it would be boring business meetings. Vivian's hand started shaking. Why are you asking me this? Instead of answering, Minseo pulled up something else on his tablet, turned it toward her. It was a financial document, lots of numbers and corporate language Vivian didn't understand, but she recognized Ethan's name at the top. And beside it, in smaller print, Jade Circle Holdings, LLC. What am I looking at? She whispered. A shell company registered in the Cayman Islands 18 months ago. It handles wire transfers between European banks and accounts in Seoul. Perfectly legal on paper. Except the money flowing through it originates from sources the Jade Circle uses to launder proceeds from less legal activities. Vivian felt like the air had been sucked out of the cabin. Ethan's involved with money laundering? He's been working with the Jade Circle for at least 2 years, maybe longer. That's impossible. He wouldn't. She couldn't finish the sentence because her brain couldn't process what Minseo was saying. The phone calls he made at the wedding weren't to French criminals, Minseo continued. They were to Jade Circle contacts in Paris, people he works with regularly. He told them I was there, that I was with you, that you were his ex-girlfriend, and I was using you to get close to him. Why would he say that? Because the Jade Circle and my organization have been competing for the same contracts in Europe for 3 years. We're not at war, but we're not friends either. Ethan thought if he could position me as a threat who was using you for access to him, the Jade Circle would handle me as a favor. Remove a business competitor and protect one of their assets at the same time. Vivian's vision was starting to blur at the edges. So the wedding, the confrontation, all of it, he set you up? He tried to. And now he's in Seoul with one of their operatives. Yes. Why? Minseo's expression went absolutely glacial. Because the plan didn't work. I left Paris alive, and now he's trying to convince them I'm enough of a threat that they should take more direct action. More direct than what happened at the wedding? Much more direct. The cabin felt too small suddenly, too hot. Vivian stood up on shaky legs and paced to the back of the plane. Her pulse was hammering in her throat. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Ethan was a criminal. Ethan had been a criminal the entire time she'd known him. Every business trip to Seoul, every vague explanation about work, every time he'd deflected her questions about what he actually did all day. He'd been laundering money for a Korean crime syndicate, and she'd had absolutely no idea. How long have you known? She asked without turning around. About Ethan specifically? Since yesterday. She turned to face him. You knew yesterday and you didn't tell me? I was still confirming details. I didn't want to make accusations without proof. So you just let me walk into that wedding thinking he was just a coward who couldn't handle commitment. You let me have that entire conversation with him on the terrace where he told me he made a mistake and still loved me. You let me believe any of it was real. I didn't know he was going to confess anything to you. But you knew he was dangerous. You knew he was connected to people who could hurt me, and you said nothing. If I'd told you without proof, you wouldn't have believed me. You would have thought I was lying to manipulate you. So instead, you manipulated me by withholding information. I protected you by keeping you close until I understood the full scope of what we were dealing with. Vivian laughed. It sounded hysterical even to her own ears. You protected me? I'm on a plane to Seoul because my ex-boyfriend sicked criminals on us at his wedding. How exactly is that protection? You're alive. That's protection. That's not good enough. It's all I have right now. They stared at each other across the cabin. Minseo looked completely calm, but Vivian could see tension in every line of his body. What else aren't you telling me? She asked quietly. What do you mean? You've known about Ethan since yesterday. You confirmed he works with the Jade Circle. You have security teams tracking his movements in Seoul. She stepped closer. That level of intelligence doesn't happen overnight, so either you're lying about the timeline or there's more to this than you're saying. Minseo's expression didn't change. Both. The admission hit like ice water. Explain, Vivian said. I've known who Ethan Vale was for approximately 8 months. The timeline made her stomach drop. Since he left me. Yes. How? Because I was already investigating the Jade Circle's European operations when your name appeared in a file. Vivian's legs felt weak. She sat down hard in the nearest seat. What file? Background check on potential leverage points for Jade Circle assets in Paris. Ethan Vale's file included a recent breakup with a long-term girlfriend, your name, your photo, basic personal information. The file recommended against using you as leverage because the breakup appeared genuine and you had no ongoing contact with him. They were going to use me against him? They considered it, then dismissed it as unnecessary. When did you see this file? 6 weeks ago. Vivian felt like she was drowning. So when I sat in that cafe in Paris talking to myself about needing someone to walk into the wedding with me, you already knew who I was. Yes. You already knew Ethan was connected to criminals. Yes. You approached me specifically because you knew I could give you access to him. No. Minseo's voice sharpened. I approached you because I'd been watching you for 20 minutes rehearse conversations with a man who'd hurt you, and I recognized that particular flavor of heartbreak. The connection to Ethan was a complication I decided to work around. Work around or exploit? Both. The honesty should have been refreshing. Instead, it felt like betrayal. So everything you said, about helping me because of what happened to Yuna, about not wanting to see me walk in alone, all of it was manipulation. No. Minseo stood, crossed to where she was sitting, crouched down so they were eye level. The reason I first noticed you was because of Ethan. The reason I stayed was because of Yuna. The reason I'm still here is because somewhere between Paris and this plane, I stopped being able to separate business from something more complicated. That's not good enough. I know. I trusted you. You still can. How? Vivian's voice cracked. How am I supposed to trust anything you say when you've been lying to me since the moment we met? I haven't lied. I've withheld information. There's a difference. Not to me, there isn't. Minseo reached out like he was going to touch her face, then stopped himself. I'm trying to keep you alive, Vivian. That's not manipulation. That's the only thing I'm certain about right now. Why should I believe you? Because if I wanted to use you against Ethan, I would have done it already. Instead, I put you on a plane to the one city where I have enough control to guarantee your safety. That's not exploitation. That's protection. Protection I never asked for. But protection you need anyway. They stared at each other. Vivian wanted to scream at him, wanted to demand he turn the plane around, wanted to go back to 3 days ago when her biggest problem was deciding whether to attend a wedding. But she couldn't, because everything Minseo was saying was probably true. And that made it worse somehow. What happens when we land? She asked quietly. We go to the safe house. I deal with Ethan and the Jade Circle. You stay out of sight until it's resolved. And if it can't be resolved, it will be. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. In fact, Seoul appeared beneath them in a sprawl of lights that made Paris look quaint. Skyscrapers stabbing into the pre-dawn sky. Rivers of traffic already moving despite the hour. A city that never quite slept. Vivian watched it grow closer with a knot of dread in her stomach. The plane landed smoothly, taxied to a private terminal, stopped. Minseo's phone rang before the engines had fully shut down. He answered in Korean, listened. His face went absolutely blank. What? He said quietly. Then, when? Then, don't move. I'm on my way. He ended the call and looked at Vivian with an expression she couldn't read. What happened? She asked. Jin Hai Wan just checked out of the Grand Hyatt. Where's Ethan? Still there. Alone. My security team says he looks scared. Of what? Me, probably. Minseo stood and grabbed his bag. One of the security men opened the cabin door. Early morning Seoul air flooded in, cold and sharp with pollution. Change of plans, Minseo said. We're not going to the safe house yet. Where are we going? To have a conversation with your ex-boyfriend about why he thought starting a war was a good idea. But the Grand Hyatt sat in the hills overlooking Seoul like a monument to money. Vivian had stayed in nice hotels before, but nothing like this. Marble, gold fixtures, doormen who looked like they earned more than she did. Minseo walked through the lobby like he owned the building. Maybe he did. People certainly moved out of his way fast enough. They took an elevator to the 15th floor, walked down a hallway that smelled like expensive carpet and other people's secrets, stopped in front of room 1547. Minseo knocked. 3 sharp raps. Silence. Then footsteps. The security chain rattled. The door opened 6 inches. Ethan looked terrible. Unwashed hair, wrinkled shirt, eyes that hadn't slept in at least 24 hours. The moment he saw Minseo, his face went white. How did you... He couldn't finish the sentence. We need to talk, Minseo said calmly. Let us in. I don't... That wasn't a request. Ethan's eyes shifted to Vivian. You're with him? Open the door, Ethan. He hesitated for maybe 3 seconds. Then he unlatched the chain and stepped back. The hotel suite was trashed. Champagne bottles on every surface, clothes scattered across furniture, the bed unmade. It looked like the aftermath of either a party or a breakdown, possibly both. Where's your wife? Vivian asked. Paris. She didn't... Ethan ran his hand through his hair. This isn't what it looks like. What does it look like? Minseo asked mildly. I can explain everything. Then do it. Now. Before I lose patience. Ethan sank onto the edge of the bed. He looked smaller somehow, diminished, like reality had finally caught up to whatever story he'd been telling himself. I made some mistakes, he started. Understatement of the century, Vivian said. I got involved with some people I shouldn't have gotten involved with. They offered me opportunities, money, access. I thought I could manage it. The Jade Circle, Minseo said. Ethan's head snapped up. How do you... I know everything. The shell companies, the wire transfers, the trips to Seoul you told Vivian were boring business meetings. I know all of it. Then you know, I'm not the one calling the shots. I'm just, a middleman, a facilitator, a useful idiot who thought he could play in the deep end without drowning. The words landed like punches. Ethan's face flushed red. I'm trying to get out. By throwing me to them as a distraction? Minseo's voice stayed perfectly level. By telling them I was using Vivian to get to you? That's not trying to get out. That's trying to trade up. I panicked. When I saw you at the wedding with her, I thought that if you made me look like a threat, they'd remove me and you could continue your comfortable arrangement without competition. Yes. Did it work? Ethan laughed bitterly. What do you think? Jin Hae-won spent 4 hours telling me exactly how many ways your organization could dismantle mine if they felt motivated. Then she told me to fix it or disappear. Those were my options. Fix it or disappear. Where is she now? I don't know. She left 2 hours ago. Said she'd be in touch. Minseo walked to the window, looked out over Seoul like he was calculating something. When she contacts you again, you're going to tell her you made a mistake, that I'm not a threat, that the situation at the wedding was a personal matter that has nothing to do with business. She won't believe that. Make her believe it. And if I can't, then you'll find out exactly how motivated my organization can be when someone wastes our time. Ethan stood slowly. Are you threatening me? I'm giving you an opportunity to fix your mistake before it costs you everything. I'm not afraid of you. You should be. The tension in the room shifted into something dangerous. Vivian stepped between them. Stop, both of you. Vivian, Ethan started. No, you don't get to talk right now. She turned on him with 8 months of anger, finally finding a target. You lied to me. For 2 entire years, you lied about who you were and what you did and who you were involved with. You let me plan a future with you while you were laundering money for criminals. You broke up with me via text message and then had the audacity to invite me to your wedding like we were mature adults who'd simply grown apart. And now I find out you've been playing games with people who make their living hurting others, and you dragged me into it without telling me anything. Or Sen, I was protecting you. Bullshit, you were protecting yourself. Ethan's expression cracked. You're right, okay? You're absolutely right. I'm a coward and a liar, and I hurt you in ways I can never fix. But I didn't know how to get out. The Jade Circle doesn't let people just walk away. So you tried to trade Minseo's life for your freedom. I made a phone call, that's all. I needed them to see him as enough of a problem that they'd forget about me for a while. People could have died because of that phone call. But they didn't. Only because Minseo was smart enough to leave Paris before it got that far. Ethan looked at Minseo. I'm sorry. For what it's worth? I'm sorry. Apologies are worthless, Minseo said flatly. Fix this or I will. Those are your only options. How am I supposed to… Minseo's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his entire body went rigid. What? Vivian asked. He didn't answer, just stared at his phone screen like it had just delivered the worst news possible. Minseo, what is it? He looked up slowly. We need to leave, right now. Why? Because Jin Hae-won didn't leave. She just checked into a different hotel, the same hotel where my safe house is located. The words took a second to penetrate. Then Vivian understood. They know where you were taking me, she whispered. Yes. How? Minseo's eyes shifted to Ethan. Ethan's face went white. I didn't tell them anything. I swear I… You didn't have to. Minseo's voice had gone cold as winter. Your phone. They've been tracking it since you landed. They saw you check into this hotel. They know we're here right now. That's impossible. Is it? You work for them, Ethan. Did you really think they weren't monitoring everything you do? Ethan looked like he was going to be sick. Vivian's pulse was hammering so hard she could barely think. What do? We leave. Different hotel, different part of the city, somewhere they won't think to look. And then? Then I end this. How? Minseo looked at her with eyes that had gone absolutely lethal. However, I have to. Pupan. They left Ethan in the hotel room looking like a man who'd just realized he'd bet everything on the wrong hand. The elevator ride down felt like descending into hell. Vivian's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She pressed them against her sides and tried to breathe normally. Minseo was on his phone speaking rapid Korean, making arrangements, changing plans, adapting to a situation that was spiraling further out of control with every passing minute. The lobby was empty except for a few early morning business travelers. Nobody looked at them twice. They made it outside to where Minseo's car was waiting. That's when Vivian saw her. Jin Hae-won stood beside a black sedan across the street. Same woman from the airport photo, same carefully blank expression. But now she was looking directly at them. And she wasn't alone. 4 men in dark suits fanned out behind her. Professional. Armed, probably. The kind of people who made violence look easy. Minseo saw them at the same moment. His hand went to Vivian's elbow, guiding her quickly toward his car. Don't run, he said quietly. Walk normally. Get in the car. They're right there. I know. Get in the car. Jin Hae-won crossed the street. Slow, deliberate, no hurry at all. She stopped 10 feet away from Minseo's car and smiled. Mr. Kang, she said in perfect English. We should talk. I have nothing to discuss with you. I think you do, especially about your traveling companion. Miss Laurent isn't your concern. She is when she's connected to one of our associates and a man who's been disrupting our operations in Paris. I haven't disrupted anything. That's a matter of perspective. Vivian wanted to run, wanted to scream, wanted to do literally anything except stand there while criminals discussed her like she was a business problem to be solved. Minseo's voice stayed perfectly calm. You have 5 seconds to walk away before this becomes a situation neither of our organizations wants. Jin smiled wider. Is that a threat? It's a warning. Warnings require leverage. What leverage do you have here? More than you think. Prove it. The standoff lasted maybe 3 seconds that felt like hours. Then Minseo pulled out his phone, made a call, said 2 words in Korean. 3 seconds later, every light in the Grand Hyatt went out. Emergency lighting kicked in immediately, but the effect was immediate and chaotic. Car alarms started blaring. People started shouting. The 4 men behind Jin Hae-won looked confused. Minseo used the distraction. He grabbed Vivian's arm and pulled her into the car in one smooth motion. The door slammed. The locks engaged. The driver accelerated before Vivian had even found her seatbelt. Behind them, Jin Hae-won stood in the street watching them disappear into Seoul traffic. She didn't look angry. She looked impressed. They drove for 30 minutes through parts of Seoul Vivian didn't recognize. Industrial neighborhoods, side streets, places that didn't appear on tourist maps. Finally, the car stopped in front of a building that looked abandoned. Minseo got out, gestured for Vivian to follow. The inside was anything but abandoned. Armed guards, security cameras, steel-reinforced doors, the kind of place designed to keep people either in or out depending on which side of the door you were standing on. Minseo led her down a hallway, through 3 separate security checkpoints, into a small room that looked like a very expensive prison cell. Clean, minimalist, 1 bed, 1 chair, no windows. "You'll stay here until I resolve the situation," he said. Vivian looked around the room that was supposed to keep her safe and felt like she was looking at a cage. "For how long?" "However long it takes." "That's still not an answer." "It's all I have." She turned on him. 8 months of heartbreak and 3 days of manipulation and 1 very long plane ride worth of lies finally exploding into rage. "You used me," she said. "From the very beginning, you used me to get to Ethan and his connections, and you lied about all of it. I protected you. You trapped me. I kept you alive. For what? So I could sit in this room waiting for you to decide my life is worth more than whatever business arrangement you're trying to salvage? That's not what this is." "Then what is it?" Minseo looked at her for a long moment. Then he did something she never expected. He told her the truth. 8 months ago, I saw your photo in a file about Jade Circle assets in Europe. Just a background check. Nothing urgent, but something about your picture made me look twice. You looked like Yuna. Not physically, but the expression. Like you'd just realized the person you trusted most had betrayed you. He stepped closer. I started following Ethan's movements. Not because I cared about him, because I wanted to understand what kind of man could put that look on someone's face. The more I learned about him, the more I realized he was exactly like the man who destroyed Yuna. Powerful, connected, careless with people who loved him. Closer still. When I saw you in that Paris cafe talking to yourself about needing someone to walk into a wedding with you, I knew exactly who you were. I knew Ethan would be there. I knew showing up with you would make him nervous. I knew all of it. He was standing directly in front of her now, close enough that she could see exhaustion and something else in his eyes. But I didn't know I'd care what happened to you after the wedding ended. I didn't plan for that. And now I can't separate protecting you from wanting to keep you close, and I don't know which one is honest anymore. The confession hung between them. Vivian's hands were shaking, her pulse hammering, everything she'd believed about the past 3 days crumbling into something more complicated and terrible and real. "I don't know if I can trust you," she whispered. "I know. I don't know if anything you've said is true. Most of it is. That's not good enough. It's all I have." They stared at each other, 2 people connected by lies and truth in equal measure. Then Minseo's phone rang. He answered, listened. His face went absolutely white. "When?" Pause. "Are you certain?" Longer pause. "Do nothing. I'm on my way." He ended the call and looked at Vivian with an expression that made her blood run cold. "What happened?" she asked. "Ethan's dead." The words didn't make sense at first, just sounds without meaning. "What?" "Hotel security found him 20 minutes ago. Single gunshot, professional execution." Vivian's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the bed. "That's not... We were just talking to him." "I know." "Who killed him?" "The Jade Circle, most likely. They decided he was more liability than asset." "Because of us. Because we went to see him. Because..." "No." Minseo crouched down in front of her. This was always going to happen. Ethan made too many mistakes, talked to too many people. The moment he tried to use me to save himself, his death sentence was signed. We didn't kill him. We just didn't save him. Vivian couldn't breathe properly. Her ex-boyfriend, the man she'd loved for 2 years, the man who'd broken her heart and lied to her and dragged her into something terrible, dead. Just dead. "What happens now?" she whispered. Minseo stood slowly. "Now I end this before the Jade Circle decides you're a loose end worth tying up." "How?" "By giving them exactly what they want." "Which is?" Minseo looked at her. Really looked at her, like he was memorizing her face for the last time. "Me." Understanding hit like ice water. "No," Vivian said immediately. "Absolutely not. Whatever you're thinking, I'm going to trade myself for your safety. Clean exit, no complications. They get to remove a competitor. You get to go home. That's insane. It's logical. It's suicide. It's the only way to guarantee you survive this. Vivian stood on shaking legs. I didn't ask you to die for me. You didn't have to. I'm not worth that. That's not your decision to make. She grabbed his jacket. Don't do this, please. There has to be another way. There isn't. Then we find one together. There's no we anymore, Vivian. There's just you getting out of Seoul alive. That's all that matters now. He pulled away from her, walked toward the door. Vivian's voice cracked. Minseo. He stopped, didn't turn around. If you do this, she said quietly, if you trade your life for mine, I'll never forgive you. I can live with that. You won't be living, that's the point. Finally, he turned to look at her. I couldn't save Yuna, but I can save you. That's worth whatever comes next. Then he walked out. The door locked behind him, and Vivian was left alone in a room with no windows, no answers, and the man who'd become her entire world walking toward his own execution like it was the only choice left that made any. Vivian stood frozen in the locked room for exactly 12 seconds after Minseo left. Then she started screaming. Not words, just raw sound. Fury and terror compressed into noise that bounced off concrete walls and came back at her like mockery. She grabbed the chair and slammed it against the door. Once, twice. The metal didn't even dent. Let me out! Her voice was already going hoarse. Open this door right now! Silence. She pounded on the steel with both fists until her hands went numb, kicked it until her foot throbbed, threw herself against it like maybe sheer desperation could break through reinforced metal. Nothing moved. The room was designed to keep people exactly where they were, and Vivian was exactly where Minseo wanted her, safe, protected, trapped while he walked toward his own execution like it was some noble sacrifice instead of the most insane thing she'd ever heard. She sank down against the door, breathing hard, hands shaking. Ethan was dead. Shot in a hotel room probably minutes after they'd left him there, looking scared and small and finally honest about what a coward he'd been. And now Minseo was going to trade his life to the people who'd killed him, for her. A woman he'd known for 3 days. A woman he'd lied to and manipulated and used to get close to a criminal operation. A woman who'd somehow become important enough that dying for her made sense in his twisted logic. Vivian pressed her forehead against cold metal and tried to think. There had to be a way out. Had to be something she could do besides sit here waiting for news that Minseo was dead and she was free to fly home to New York and pretend none of this had ever happened. She looked around the room properly for the first time. Concrete walls, one bed bolted to the floor, one chair she'd already broken trying to use as a battering ram, air vent too small to fit through, door that opened outward so she couldn't pop the hinges, no phone, no windows, no way to contact anyone. She was completely cut off. Vivian stood slowly. Her body felt like it belonged to someone else. Hands still shaking, pulse hammering in her throat. That particular clarity that came with absolute desperation. She walked to the air vent and pressed her ear against it. Voices. Distant. Speaking Korean. She couldn't understand the words, but she could hear tone. Urgent. Clipped. The sound of people preparing for something. She moved to the door and did the same thing. Footsteps outside. Multiple people moving past. Then silence. Then more footsteps. Closer this time. Stopping right outside her door. Vivian held her breath. The lock clicked. The door opened. A woman stood there. Early 30s, Korean, wearing tactical gear and carrying a handgun in a hip holster. She looked at Vivian with an expression that was professional and completely neutral. You need to come with me, she said in accented English. Where? Now. No questions. I'm not going anywhere until someone tells me what's happening to Minseo. Mr. Kang gave specific instructions. You're being moved to a secondary location. Why? Because this building is no longer secure. The words made Vivian's stomach drop. What does that mean? It means the Jade Circle knows we're here. It means we have approximately 15 minutes before they breach the outer perimeter. It means you need to move right now or we're all dead. She said it so calmly, like discussing dinner plans instead of imminent death. Vivian didn't move. Where's Minseo? Negotiating. With who? People who will kill him if you're not somewhere safe when the negotiation ends. So move. The logic was ironclad and infuriating. Vivian followed her out of the room. The hallway was chaos barely contained, armed men moving with purpose, security monitors showing multiple angles of the building exterior, someone barking orders in Korean, the smell of gun oil and sweat and fear. The woman led Vivian through 3 corridors, down a stairwell, into a basement parking garage filled with black vehicles. Get in, she gestured to an SUV with tinted windows. Where are we going? Somewhere they won't look. That's not an answer. It's all you're getting. Vivian climbed into the back seat. The woman got in beside her. The driver was already moving before the door closed. They drove fast. Too fast. Weaving through Seoul traffic like the laws of physics were suggestions. Vivian gripped the door handle and tried not to think about dying in a car crash after surviving everything else. How long have you worked for Minseo? She asked. The woman didn't look at her. 6 years. Do you trust him? With my life. Even when he makes insane decisions like trading himself to a criminal syndicate? Especially then. Why? For the first time, the woman's expression shifted, something almost like respect. Because Mr. Kang doesn't make decisions lightly. If he's offering himself, it's because he's already calculated every other option and found them wanting. Or because he's suicidal. He's not suicidal, he's strategic. Those aren't mutually exclusive. The woman almost smiled. You're braver than your file suggested. What file? The one Mr. Kang compiled on you. Basic information, background, vulnerabilities, standard procedure for anyone entering his sphere. Vivian felt cold spread through her chest. He had a file on me? He has files on everyone. When did he compile it? The woman was quiet for a moment. Then, 8 months ago, after your name appeared in Jade Circle Intelligence. So it was true. All of it. Minseo had been watching her for 8 months, planning, calculating, waiting for an opportunity to use her connection to Ethan, and she'd walked right into it. The SUV turned down a narrow alley, stopped behind a building that looked like an old factory, rust-stained walls, broken windows, the kind of place people avoided after dark. Out, the woman said. They entered through a side door that looked rusted shut but opened smoothly. Inside was the opposite of the exterior. Clean, modern, more armed guards, more security. Another safe house. Vivian was led up 3 flights of stairs into a room that looked like a command center. Banks of monitors, computer equipment, 3 people working frantically at terminals. And in the center of it all, standing in front of a screen showing a live video feed, was someone Vivian recognized. Jin Hae-won, the Jade Circle operative from the hotel. The woman who'd watched them escape. The woman who'd probably ordered Ethan's execution. She was on the screen, live, looking directly at the camera, looking at Vivian. Miss Laurent. Jin's voice came through speakers with perfect clarity. How nice of you to join us. Vivian's escort pushed her forward slightly, positioned her in front of the camera. What is this? Vivian asked. A conversation. Jin smiled. It looked genuine. It absolutely wasn't. Mr. Kang has made a very generous offer. He's willing to surrender himself to the Jade Circle in exchange for your guaranteed safety. Quite romantic, actually. Where is he? Nearby, waiting for confirmation that you're secure before he proceeds. I want to talk to him. That's not possible. Make it possible. Jin's smile widened. You're not in a position to make demands. Neither are you, apparently, or you wouldn't need Minseo to surrender. You just take him. Something flickered in Jin's expression. Annoyance, maybe, or respect. Mr. Kang is well protected, she said carefully. Taking him by force would be costly. His offer saves everyone significant trouble. So you're going to kill him? That depends entirely on how cooperative he is. That's not an answer. It's the only one you'll get. Vivian stepped closer to the camera, close enough that her face filled the frame. I have a counteroffer. Jin raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. Let me talk to him. 5 minutes. Then I'll tell you exactly where Ethan kept his records of every wire transfer he processed for the Jade Circle over the past 2 years. The room went completely silent. Jin's expression didn't change, but Vivian saw her shoulders tense slightly. You're bluffing. Am I? Ethan told me things, showed me things. He was sloppy when he drank, and he drank a lot. I know about the Cayman accounts, the shell companies, the routes you use to move money through Europe. I know all of it. If that were true, Mr. King would have used that information already. Minseo doesn't know I have it. I never told him. It was a complete lie. Vivian had no idea where Ethan kept records or if records even existed, but she'd seen enough crime shows to know that criminals cared about two things above everything else: money and leverage. And right now she was offering both. Jin was silent for a long moment. Then she turned away from the camera and spoke to someone off screen in rapid Korean, turned back. 5 minutes, she said. But if you're lying, Miss Laurent, what happens to Mr. Kang will seem merciful compared to what happens to you. The screen went black. Vivian's escort grabbed her arm. What the hell are you doing? Buying time. By lying to the Jade Circle, that's suicide. So is letting Minseo trade his life for mine. You don't have any information. I know. Then what's your plan? Vivian looked at her directly. Get me to wherever Minseo is, right now, before they realize I'm full of shit. The woman stared at her. Then something shifted in her expression, a decision being made. You're insane, she said. Probably. Are you going to help me or not? For a long moment, the woman didn't move. Then she pulled out her phone and made a call. Spoke in Korean. Listened. Hung up. We have 12 minutes before the Jade Circle realizes you lied. Mr. Kang is 3 blocks from here in a neutral location waiting for final confirmation of your safety. Take me to him. If I do this, we're both dead. If you don't, he's dead anyway. The woman looked at Vivian for 3 more seconds. Then she grabbed a jacket from a nearby chair and threw it at her. Put that on. Stay close. Don't speak unless I tell you to. They were moving before Vivian had the jacket fully on. What? The neutral location was a tea house. Of all the places Vivian expected to find a mafia boss negotiating his own execution, a quiet tea house in a residential Seoul neighborhood wasn't on the list. But there it was. Small. Traditional. Paper screens and low tables and the smell of green tea. And inside, visible through the front window, sat Kang Minseo. He wasn't alone. 3 men in dark suits sat across from him. Jade Circle, probably. They looked relaxed, confident, like they'd already won. Minseo looked calm, dangerously calm. The way he'd looked at the wedding right before he'd grabbed Ethan's wrist. Vivian's escort stopped her half a block away. This is as far as I can take you, she said quietly. If you go in there, you're on your own. What will you do? Pray Mr. Kang doesn't kill me for letting you get this far. Vivian almost smiled. Then she walked toward the tea house before her courage could fail. She opened the door. Every head in the room turned. Minseo's expression went from calm to absolutely frozen. What are you doing here? Stopping you from doing something stupid. The 3 Jade Circle men looked at each other, then at Vivian. One of them smiled. Miss Laurent, he said in perfect English. Jin said you had information for us. I lied. The smile disappeared. Excuse me? I lied. I don't have any information. I don't know where Ethan kept records or if records even exist. I just needed to buy enough time to get here before Minseo did something irreversibly idiotic. The room temperature dropped 10 degrees. Minseo stood slowly. Vivian, leave. Right now. No. This doesn't concern you anymore. Like hell it doesn't. You're about to trade your life for mine. That concerns me pretty directly. I'm trying to keep you safe. By dying? That's not safety. That's just you deciding my life is worth more than yours without asking if I agree. This isn't a negotiation. Everything's a negotiation. You taught me that. One of the Jade Circle men stood, pulled a handgun from his jacket, pointed it casually at Vivian. Sit down, he said calmly. Both of you. Minseo moved faster than Vivian's eyes could track. 1 second he was standing 3 feet away. The next second he was between her and the gun, positioned so his body blocked hers completely. Lower the weapon, he said quietly. Now. Or what? Or I stop being cooperative and this becomes very expensive for everyone. You're surrounded. You have no leverage. I have more than you think. Minseo pulled out his phone, held it up so everyone could see the screen. It showed a live video feed, a warehouse somewhere. And inside, stacked floor to ceiling, were crates marked with jade circle shipping codes. 3 hours ago, my people secured your primary Seoul distribution hub, Minseo said calmly. Everything in that warehouse belongs to me now. Approximately 40 million in merchandise, maybe more. Hard to estimate. The three men looked at each other. Minseo continued, here's what's going to happen. You're going to lower your weapons. You're going to contact Jin Hai-wan and tell her the negotiation is over. And you're going to let Miss Laurent and me walk out of here without any further discussion. And if we refuse, then I burn that warehouse and everything in it, along with the 3 others my people secured in the past 2 hours. Your entire Seoul operation reduced to ash in under an hour. You're bluffing. Minseo's expression didn't change. He tapped his phone screen. Somewhere in the warehouse feed, flames appeared, small at first, then spreading. That's one warehouse, he said. I have 3 more ready to go. Tell me again how I'm bluffing. The man with the gun looked genuinely uncertain for the first time. Then his phone rang. He answered, listened. His face went progressively paler. Jin wants to talk to you, he said finally, holding out the phone to Minseo. Minseo took it, put it on speaker. Jin Hae-won's voice came through cold and furious. You just started a war. You started it when you killed Ethan Vale in a way that pointed suspicion at me. I'm just finishing it. By destroying 40 million in merchandise? By demonstrating that threatening people I care about has consequences. Miss Laurent lied to me. Yes, to save my life. I find that remarkably brave. I find it remarkably stupid. That's the difference between us. I value loyalty over profit. Jin was quiet for a moment, then, what do you want? Full amnesty. For me and Miss Laurent. No retaliation, no further contact. We walk away and you rebuild your distribution network without me burning the rest of it down. That's a significant ask. It's a generous offer considering I could just burn everything and deal with the consequences later. The consequences would include your death. Maybe. But yours would be guaranteed. I've positioned people very close to you, Jin. Close enough that you wouldn't see them coming. Silence. Then Jin laughed. Actually laughed. You're insane. I'm motivated. There's a difference. What's to stop me from agreeing now and killing you later? The same thing that stopped you from killing me already. I'm too expensive to remove and too useful to keep as an enemy. Letting me walk away costs you 40 million in merchandise. Killing me costs you 3 times that in the war that follows. More silence. Vivian held her breath. Finally, Jin said, You have 24 hours to leave Seoul. If I see you or Miss Laurent after that, our agreement is void. Understood. And Kang? Yes? Don't ever threaten my operations again. Then don't ever threaten people I care about. Jin hung up. The 3 Jade Circle men stood slowly, holstered their weapons, walked out of the tea house without another word. The moment they were gone, Vivian's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the floor, breathing hard, shaking, the adrenaline that had kept her moving finally crashing into exhaustion. Minseo crouched beside her. Are you hurt? I'm fine. She couldn't finish, just shook her head. That was the stupidest thing you've ever done, says the man who was about to surrender to criminals. I had a plan. Your plan was dying. That's not a plan. That's giving up. I was trying to protect you. I don't need protection. I need you alive. The words hung between them. Minseo reached out slowly and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The same gesture he'd made on the plane. Careful. Intimate. Like she was something precious and breakable. You shouldn't have come here, he said quietly. Probably not. Jin could have killed you. She could have killed you too. I'm used to that risk. Well, I'm not used to watching people I care about walk toward their own execution, so I guess we're both doing things we're not used to. Minseo's hand was still against her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbones so lightly she barely felt it. People I care about, he repeated softly. You said that twice now. Yeah, so I'm trying to figure out if you meant it. Vivian looked at him. This dangerous man who'd lied to her and protected her and somehow become the only person she trusted in a city full of strangers. I meant it, she said. Even knowing everything I've done? Everything I am? especially knowing that. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Two people connected by lies and truth, and something neither of them had names for yet. Then Minseo's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. His expression shifted. We need to move. Why? Because Jin's 24-hour deadline starts now, and I don't trust her to honor it if we're still in the city when she changes her mind. He stood and offered his hand. Vivian took it. They walked out of the tea house together into cold Seoul morning air that smelled like rain and exhaust and possibility. Minseo's car was waiting 3 blocks away. Same driver. Same woman who'd escorted Vivian earlier, looking deeply unhappy but alive. Where to? The driver asked. Incheon Airport, private terminal. We're leaving Korea. Where are we going? Vivian asked. Minseo looked at her. Anywhere that isn't here. You have a preference? Somewhere warm, with beaches and no criminal syndicates trying to kill us. That limits our options significantly. I'm flexible. They drove through Seoul one last time, past neon signs and crowded streets and a city that had almost become Vivian's grave. She watched it blur past the window and felt nothing except relief. Ethan was dead. The man she'd loved for 2 years. The man who'd broken her heart and lied about everything and dragged her into something terrible. Dead. She should feel something, grief maybe, or an anger, or regret for all the ways their relationship had unraveled. But all she felt was tired, and grateful to be alive, and terrified of what came next. What happens now? She asked quietly. Minseo's hand found hers in the space between their seats. Now we disappear for a while. Let things settle. Give Jin time to forget how angry she is. How long? Months, probably. I have a life in New York, a job, an apartment. I know. I can't just disappear for months. I know that too. So what are you saying? Minseo turned to look at her. I'm saying you have a choice. Come with me until this is truly over, or I put you on a commercial flight to New York right now and we never see each other again. The offer landed like a punch, because it wasn't really a choice at all. Going back to New York meant her old life, her studio apartment, her job she barely tolerated, her best friend who'd ask a million questions she couldn't answer. Going with Minseo meant uncertainty, danger, a future she couldn't predict with a man she barely knew but somehow trusted more than anyone she'd ever met. If I come with you, Vivian said slowly, what does that mean? It means we figure it out together. No more lies, no more manipulation, just 2 people trying to survive something neither of us planned. That's not much of a guarantee. It's all I have. Vivian looked at their joined hands. His fingers wrapped around hers like an anchor in rough water. She thought about Ethan, about 2 years of a relationship built on lies she'd been too naive to see, about planning a future with someone who'd never really existed outside her imagination. She thought about the past 3 days, about walking into a cathedral like she owned the world, about Paris nights and quiet conversations, and the terrifying realization that safety could look like danger if you weren't paying attention. She thought about Minseo standing between her and a gun without hesitation, about him preparing to die for her, about the way he looked at her like she was worth protecting, even when protecting her meant destroying everything he'd built. The choice wasn't hard. It was terrifying. But it wasn't hard. Okay, she said, somewhere warm, with beaches, and absolutely no criminal syndicates. Minseo's expression shifted into something that almost looked like relief. I know a place. Where? Thailand, small island, very quiet, very remote. The kind of place people go when they need to not exist for a while. Sounds perfect. The car pulled into Incheon Airport's private terminal. Same kind of space they'd landed in 12 hours earlier. Felt like a lifetime ago. Minseo's jet was already waiting on the tarmac. They boarded quickly. The door closed. The engine started. Seoul disappeared beneath them for the second time in 24 hours. This time, Vivian didn't look back. The flight to Thailand took 6 hours. Vivian slept for 4 of them. Deep, dreamless sleep that came from exhaustion and relief and the bone-deep knowledge that she'd survived something that should have killed her. When she woke up, Minseo was watching her. How long have I been out? She asked. Since we reached cruising altitude. You should sleep too. I told you I don't sleep well on planes. Control issues. Exactly. Vivian sat up, accepted coffee from the same security woman who'd helped her earlier. The woman's expression was still professionally neutral, but Vivian thought she saw something almost like approval in her eyes. Thank you, Vivian said, for earlier, for helping me get to the tea house. Don't thank me. If Mr. Kang had died because of my decision to let you go, I would have spent the rest of my life regretting it. But he didn't die. No. You saved him instead. The woman almost smiled. That took courage. That took stupidity. Sometimes they're the same thing. She walked away before Vivian could respond. Minseo was still watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. What? Vivian asked. I'm trying to figure out if you're real. Pretty sure I am. Most people would have run. The moment they realized what they'd gotten into, the moment they understood who I really was, most people would have run and never looked back. I'm not most people, apparently. No, you're not. Minseo leaned forward slightly. Can I ask you something? Yes. When you walked into that tea house, what did you think was going to happen? Vivian thought about it. Honestly, I thought they'd probably shoot me, or you'd be so angry at me for interfering that you'd never speak to me again, or we'd both die and at least I wouldn't have to live knowing I let you sacrifice yourself without trying to stop it. Those are all terrible outcomes. I'm aware. So why do it? Vivian looked at him directly. Because somewhere between Paris and Seoul, you became more important to me than my own safety, and I'd rather die trying to save you than live knowing I didn't try. The confession hung between them. Minseo's expression shifted into something raw, vulnerable, the kind of expression she'd never seen on his face before. I don't deserve that, he said quietly. Probably not, but you're stuck with it anyway. Vivian, don't. Don't apologize or try to talk me out of it or tell me I'm making a mistake. I've made plenty of those already. At least this one's mine. For a long moment, Minseo didn't speak. Then he stood, crossed to where she was sitting, knelt down so they were eye level. I need to tell you something, he said, and I need you to listen without interrupting. Okay. When I saw your photo 8 months ago in that intelligence file, I told myself I was just gathering information, just doing my job. But the truth is I couldn't stop looking at your face. You looked so... He struggled for words. Broken, but still standing, like you'd been shattered and somehow figured out how to keep existing anyway. He reached out and took her hand. I started following Ethan because I wanted to understand what kind of man could do that to someone. The more I learned, the more I hated him. And the more I hated him, the more I wanted to meet you, to see if you were real or just someone I'd invented in my head. And when you met me, you were real, more real than anyone I'd met in years. And I knew immediately I was going to hurt you because that's what I do. I use people. I manipulate them. I protect myself by keeping everyone at a distance. So why didn't you? Because you wouldn't let me. You kept pushing through every wall I built, kept asking questions I didn't want to answer, kept looking at me like I was someone worth saving even when I was lying to you. His voice cracked slightly. I've done terrible things, Vivian. Things you don't know about. Things I'll never tell you because they'd change how you look at me. But I need you to understand something. What? You're not a mistake. You're the first honest thing that's happened to me in 6 years. And I don't know what to do with that except try not to ruin it. Vivian felt tears burning behind her eyes, but refused to let them fall. You're not going to ruin it, she said. You don't know that. Neither do you. They stared at each other. Two damaged people trying to figure out how to be honest in a world built on lies. Then Vivian leaned forward and kissed him. It wasn't gentle, wasn't tentative, just desperate and honest and exactly what they both needed. Minseo responded immediately, his hands coming up to frame her face, his mouth opening against hers. Years of careful control fracturing into something raw and real. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing hard. We're going to mess this up, Vivian whispered against his mouth. Probably. We're too broken to work. Definitely. I don't care. Neither do I. They kissed again. Longer this time. Deeper. Like maybe if they could just stay in this moment forever, nothing else would matter. Eventually, Minseo pulled back, rested his forehead against hers. We need to talk about what happens when we land. Do we have to? Yes. Can it wait 5 more minutes? No. Vivian sighed. Fine. What happens when we land? We disappear completely. New identities. No contact with anyone from our old lives. Not Casey, not your job. Nobody. For how long? Until Jin Hae-won stops looking for reasons to kill me. 6 months minimum. Maybe longer. And then? Then we figure out what comes next. Together. That's not much of a plan. It's all I have. Vivian looked at him, this dangerous man who'd become her entire world in 3 days. Okay, she said. 6 months. Thailand. New identities. No contact with the outside world. You're sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Minseo smiled. Actually smiled. Not the cold, calculated expression he used in business. Something genuine. You're insane, he said. So are you. Guess we're perfect for each other. The pilot's voice came over the intercom in Korean, then English. We'll be landing in 20 minutes. Weather is clear. Temperature 28 degrees Celsius. Vivian looked out the window. Below them, the ocean spread in every direction, deep blue water reflecting afternoon sun. And ahead, barely visible, a small green island surrounded by white sand beaches. Somewhere warm, somewhere safe, somewhere they could stop running and figure out what they'd become to each other. Minseo's hand found hers again. Ready? He asked. Vivian thought about everything she was leaving behind, her apartment, her job, her old life with all its comfortable mediocrity. Thought about everything she'd survived in the past 3 days. A wedding, Paris, Seoul, criminal syndicates, her ex-boyfriend's death. Walking into a tea house full of armed men to save someone she barely knew but couldn't imagine losing. Thought about the man beside her. Dangerous and honest and somehow exactly what she needed even when she didn't know she needed it. Yeah, she said. I'm ready. The plane started its descent, and Vivian Laurent, the woman who'd walked into a cathedral in burgundy silk beside a monster and walked out having saved his life, watched Thailand rise up to meet them and felt something she hadn't felt in almost a year. Hope. Not the naive kind that ignored reality. The hard-earned kind that came from surviving the worst and choosing to keep going anyway. The wheels touched down, the engines powered down. The door opened to tropical air and sunlight, and a future neither of them could predict. Minseo stood and offered his hand. Vivian took it, and together they walked off the plane into whatever came next. The island had no name on any map Vivian could find, just a small crescent of land 30 kilometers off Thailand's southern coast, where the water ran so clear you could see fish 20 feet down, and the only sounds were waves and wind through palm trees. Minseo's safe house sat on the north end. Traditional Thai architecture mixed with modern security, teak wood and glass, open-air rooms that caught every breeze, and underneath all that beauty, reinforced doors and surveillance systems that monitored every approach. Even paradise needed protection, apparently. They'd been there for 3 days when Vivian woke up at 4 in the morning to find Minseo's side of the bed empty. She found him on the deck overlooking the ocean, shirtless in the pre-dawn darkness, staring at nothing. Can't sleep? She asked quietly. He didn't turn around. Old habits. Want company? Always. She sat beside him on the wooden steps. The air was warm and heavy with salt. Somewhere in the darkness, the ocean moved in rhythm, older than memory. What are you thinking about? Vivian asked. How long we can stay here before reality catches up? I thought we had 6 months. We have however long Jin Hae-won decides to give us. The 24-hour deadline was theater, a way for her to save face while retreating, but she's not someone who forgets slights. You burned $40 million worth of her merchandise. That's more than a slight. Exactly, Minseo finally looked at her. Which means she's either planning retaliation or she's decided I'm more useful alive. I don't know which yet. And that's keeping you up at night. Among other things, Vivian pulled her knees to her chest. The oversized shirt she was wearing, one of Minseo's, smelled like him, like sandalwood and something darker she couldn't name. What are the other things? She asked. Minseo was quiet for a long moment. Then, you gave up everything to be here, your apartment, your job, your best friend, everything you knew. And you did it for someone you'd known for 3 days. 4 days now. We landed yesterday. That's not better. I didn't give up everything. I left behind things that weren't working anyway. Casey's your best friend. Casey will understand eventually, or she won't. Either way, I made my choice. What if it's the wrong choice? Vivian looked at him, really looked at him. This dangerous man who'd somehow become the safest thing in her world. Then I'll deal with it, she said. But I'd rather regret taking a risk than spend the rest of my life wondering what would have happened if I'd been brave enough to try. That's what you said when you walked into the tea house. And we're both still alive. So I guess it worked. Minseo reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was becoming familiar, something he did when he was trying to say things he didn't have words for. I'm not good at this, he admitted quietly. At what? Caring about someone enough that their safety matters more than business. The last time I let myself care like this, she disappeared and I spent 2 years looking for ghosts. I'm not Yuna. I know, but I'm still the same person who failed to protect her. You didn't fail. You just weren't there. There's a difference. Is there? Vivian took his hand, pressed it against her cheek. Yuna made her own choices. Whatever happened to her happened because someone else decided to hurt her. You can't own other people's cruelty. I can own not being there when it mattered. Then own it, carry it. Let it make you better instead of just bitter. Minseo's expression shifted, something vulnerable and raw and completely unguarded. How are you this wise? He asked. I'm not wise. I'm just tired of letting other people's choices define my entire life. Vivian leaned her head against his shoulder. Ethan chose to lie to me for 2 years. I can't change that. He chose to get involved with criminals who eventually killed him. I can't change that either. All I can do is decide what comes next for me. And I'm choosing this. Choosing you. Choosing to see what happens when I stop running from complicated things. This is more than complicated. I know. We could both die because of decisions I made years before we met. I know that too. And you're still here. Still here. They sat in silence as the sky started lightening, dark blue fading to purple, stars disappearing one by one. I need to tell you something, Minseo said finally. About Ethan. Vivian's stomach tightened. Okay. The Jade Circle didn't kill him. The words took a moment to register. Then Vivian pulled back to look at him. What? Jin Haewon didn't order his execution. I confirmed it yesterday through back channels. She was as surprised as we were when she found out he was dead. Then who killed him? Minseo's jaw tightened. My security team found evidence in his hotel room, small caliber weapon, professional placement, the kind of signature that belongs to a specific contractor who works exclusively in Paris. I don't understand. If the Jade Circle didn't want him dead, who did? Someone who stood to gain from both Ethan's death and making it look like Jade Circle retaliation. Understanding hit like cold water. Sophia, Vivian whispered. His wife. Yes. But they just got married. Why would she? Because Ethan had a life insurance policy worth $10 million. Because his will left everything to his spouse. And because Sophia Lin isn't who she claimed to be. Minseo pulled out his phone, showed Vivian a file, photos, financial records, background information on a woman whose name wasn't actually Sophia Lin. Her real name is Sophie Laurent, Minseo said quietly. She's a professional grifter who's been running marriage scams across 3 continents for the past 8 years. She targets wealthy men, marries them quickly, arranges accidents or makes them disappear, collects insurance and inheritance, moves on. Vivian felt like the air had been sucked from her lungs. Laurent. She has the same last name as me. Not a coincidence. She researched Ethan thoroughly before approaching him, found out about you, took your last name as an alias, probably thought it would make her seem more trustworthy, a connection to his past wrapped in a new package. That's insane. That's strategic. Minseo scrolled through more documents. She met Ethan 6 months after he left you, at a tech conference in Singapore, targeted him specifically because of his Jade Circle connections, convinced him she could help him launder money more efficiently, made herself indispensable, and then married him. And then killed him before the Jade Circle could realize he was a liability. Made it look like their retaliation so nobody would investigate too closely. Vivian stood up on shaky legs. walked to the edge of the deck. The ocean was turning gold with sunrise, but she barely saw it. Ethan was dead because he'd married a professional killer who'd stolen Vivian's last name and used it to destroy him. The symmetry was almost poetic. Almost. "Does Jin Hae-won know?" Vivian asked. "Not yet. But she will. Sophie made a mistake. She tried to access Ethan's Jade Circle accounts yesterday. Thought she could transfer funds before anyone noticed. The security flags went up immediately." "What will Jin do?" "Whatever she does to people who steal from her and make her look incompetent." "She'll kill her." "Probably." Vivian turned to face him. "We have to warn her." Minseo looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "Why?" "Because she doesn't deserve to die for..." Vivian caught herself. "Okay, she absolutely deserves to die for murdering her husband. But we can't just let the Jade Circle execute her without giving her a chance to run." "She killed Ethan. The man you loved for 2 years. The man who lied to me for 2 years and dragged me into something that almost got us both killed." Vivian rubbed her face. "I don't know what I feel about Ethan anymore. Sad, maybe. Angry, definitely. But not enough to want his murderer executed by criminals. That's remarkably forgiving? That's remarkably tired of people dying." Minseo studied her face carefully. "If we warn her, she'll run. Jin will see that as us interfering in her business. The truce we just negotiated could collapse. So we don't tell Jin. We just give Sophie a heads up, anonymous message. What she does with it is her choice." "You're asking me to risk our safety for a woman who murdered someone and stole your identity. I'm asking you to help me do one decent thing in a situation where almost nothing has been decent." They stared at each other as sunrise painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. Finally, Minseo sighed. "One message, anonymous, untraceable. Then we're done with all of it. Thank you." "Don't thank me. This is still a terrible idea." "Most of my ideas lately have been terrible. This one's at least morally defensible." Minseo pulled out his phone, typed something in Korean, showed it to Vivian. "That tells her the Jade Circle knows about the account transfer, gives her maybe 12 hours to disappear before they find her. Will she make it? If she's as good as her record suggests, maybe. If she's unlucky or stupid, no." He sent the message. Then he threw the phone into the ocean. Vivian watched it arc through morning light and disappear into blue water. That was dramatic. That was necessary. No evidence, no connection, no way for anyone to trace it back to us. "You've done this before." "More times than I'd like to admit." They stood together watching the sun climb higher, the ocean turning from gold to turquoise, a new day starting whether they were ready for it or not. "What happens now?" Vivian asked. "Now we wait. See if Sophie runs or if Jin finds her first. See if our truce holds or if warning her was the mistake that breaks it. And if it breaks, then we run again. Different island, different country, however long it takes. That's not much of a life." "No, but it's the one we have right now." Vivian leaned against him. His arm came around her shoulders automatically, like they'd been doing this for years instead of days. "I don't regret it," she said quietly. "Any of it. The wedding, Paris, Seoul, all of it. Even the parts where people tried to kill us? Especially those parts. They're the only reason we're still standing here. That's a dark way to think about survival. That's an honest way to think about survival." Minseo kissed the top of her head. "You're going to be trouble. I've been trouble since the moment I walked into that cafe and agreed to let a stranger accompany me to a wedding. Best decision you ever made. Worst decision I ever made. Both can be true." They stayed there until the sun was fully up and the heat started building and reality began pressing in again. The message from Jin Hae-won arrived 3 days later. Not directly to Minseo. That would have been too obvious, too traceable. Instead, it came through one of his security team members who maintained contact with Jade Circle intermediaries. One sentence in Korean. Minseo translated it for Vivian. "The debt is settled. Don't make me regret mercy." "What does that mean?" Vivian asked. "It means Sophie Laurent got away. Jin knows someone warned her. She's decided to let it go rather than start another war." "That's good, right?" "That's surprising." Minseo set down his phone. "Jin doesn't let things go, which means she either has bigger problems to deal with or she's decided our truce is worth more than revenge." Or she's planning something worse. Always possible. Vivian looked at him across the breakfast table. They'd fallen into domestic routines without discussing it. Morning coffee on the deck, afternoon swims, evenings watching sunset and talking about everything except the violence that had brought them here. It felt almost normal, which meant it was probably temporary. "How long do we actually have?" she asked quietly. "On this island? Maybe 3 more months if we're lucky. Jin's message bought us time, but not safety. Eventually someone will find us. Or we'll need to move because staying in one place too long makes you predictable. And then? Then we decide if we're doing this long term, or if you want to go back to New York, and I disappear into whatever comes next." The offer landed like a stone, because Minseo was giving her an exit, a clean break before things got more complicated. Vivian should probably take it, should fly back to Manhattan and her old apartment and Casey's inevitable questions, and a normal life that didn't involve criminal syndicates and fake identities. Should. But when she tried to imagine it, really imagine walking away from Minseo and never seeing him again, her chest felt tight and her breathing went shallow and every instinct screamed wrong. "What if I don't want to go back?" she said. Minseo looked at her carefully. "You'd be choosing a life that's never stable, never safe, always one step ahead of someone who wants to use you as leverage against me. I know. You'd be giving up any chance at normal, at boring, at the kind of future your parents probably imagined for you. My parents imagined I'd marry someone like Ethan. Look how that worked out. I'm not Ethan. No, you're honest about being dangerous. That's better somehow." "That's insane." "Probably." Vivian reached across the table and took his hand. "But I'd rather have insane and honest than safe and fake. I spent 2 years in a relationship built on lies. At least with you, I know exactly what I'm getting into." "Do you?" "Because I'm not sure I do." "Then we figure it out together." Minseo's fingers tightened around hers. "I can't promise you safety." "I'm not asking for safety. I'm asking for honesty. I can't promise you a future that looks anything like what you probably wanted." "Good." "Because what I wanted before clearly wasn't working." "Vivian, I'm staying, unless you don't want me to, in which case say it now before I get any more attached to this completely insane situation." For a long moment, Minseo just looked at her. Then something in his expression cracked, the careful control he'd maintained since the moment they met, fracturing into something raw. "I want you to stay," he said quietly. "I want it so much it scares me, because wanting things makes you vulnerable. And I've spent 6 years making sure I never wanted anything enough to be destroyed when it disappeared. I'm not going to disappear. You can't promise that. No. But I can promise I'll fight like hell to stay if something tries to take me." "That's not comforting." "It's honest." They sat there holding hands across a breakfast table on an island with no name, while the future they were choosing spread out ahead of them, uncertain and dangerous and completely impossible to predict. And somehow, that was enough. Well, 3 months later, Vivian woke up to find Minseo already awake beside her, watching her sleep. "That's creepy," she mumbled. "That's romantic." "It's both." "I'll take it." She rolled over to face him properly. Early morning light filtered through the open walls of their bedroom. They'd adapted to the heat by sleeping with nothing between them and the ocean breeze except mosquito netting. It was the most comfortable Vivian had ever been anywhere. "What time is it?" she asked. 6:30. "Why are you awake?" "We have visitors coming." That got her attention. Vivian sat up. "What kind of visitors?" "The kind who called ahead and asked permission, so probably not the dangerous kind." "Probably isn't definitely." "Nothing's ever definitely in my world. You should know that by now." Vivian climbed out of bed and found clothes, shorts and a tank top. Her hair had gotten longer in 3 months, sun-bleached and wild. She barely recognized herself in mirrors anymore. The woman who'd walked into that Paris cathedral felt like someone else entirely. They walked down to the beach together. The visitors were arriving by boat, small fishing vessel that looked local but moved with purpose. 2 people climbed out when it reached shallow water. Vivian recognized one of them immediately. Jin Hai-wan. Her pulse spiked. Minseo's hand found the small of her back. Steady, grounding. "Stay calm," he murmured. "She asked permission. That means negotiation, not violence." Jin walked up the beach wearing expensive clothes that looked ridiculous next to the fishing boat. The second person was a man Vivian didn't recognize, young, Korean, carrying a briefcase. Mr. Kang. Jin stopped 10 feet away. Miss Laurent, thank you for seeing me. You didn't leave much choice, Minseo said calmly. Showing up uninvited to a private island tends to get attention. I apologize for the intrusion, but this conversation needed to happen face to face. What conversation? Jin gestured to the man with the briefcase. He stepped forward and handed it to Minseo. Inside were documents, financial records, account numbers, access codes. Minseo's expression didn't change, but Vivian felt him go completely still. What is this? He asked quietly. Ethan Vale's complete financial records with the Jade Circle. Every transaction, every account, every wire transfer over 2 years of operation. Why are you giving this to me? Because Sophie Laurent tried to steal from us. Because she murdered one of our associates and made it look like our retaliation. Because that kind of incompetence cannot stand. You found her. We did. 3 days ago. In Morocco. And she's no longer a problem. Jin's expression remained neutral. But before she died, she confirmed something interesting. She said someone warned her the Jade Circle was coming, gave her just enough time to run. Not enough to hide properly, but enough to make the hunt sporting. Minseo said nothing. Jin smiled slightly. I know it was you, or Miss Laurent, or both of you together, and I'm choosing to see it as a professional courtesy. You gave her a chance to run. We caught her anyway. Everyone wins. What do you want? A truce, a real one this time. You stay out of our European operations. We stay out of your Asian territories. We acknowledge that fighting each other costs more than cooperating. And if I refuse, then we continue this current arrangement where both of us waste resources watching each other instead of focusing on actual business. Jin's smile widened. But I don't think you'll refuse because Miss Laurent has made you sentimental, and sentimental men value peace over profit. Vivian stepped forward before Minseo could respond. I made him sentimental? You made him choose your safety over 40 million in leverage. That's sentiment, possibly even love. Both are weaknesses in our world. Or there are reasons to fight harder for what matters. Jin looked at her properly for the first time. Really looked at her. You're braver than I expected. You're less terrifying than I expected. I'm exactly as terrifying as I need to be. The difference is, I don't need to terrify you anymore. You're not a threat. You're just a complication that made Mr. Kang human again. She turned back to Minseo. Do we have an agreement? Minseo glanced at Vivian, some silent question passing between them. Vivian nodded once. We have an agreement, Minseo said. But if you ever threaten her again, truce or no truce, I'll burn everything you own and disappear before you can respond. I'd expect nothing less. Jin held out her hand. To peace, however temporary. Minseo shook it. To peace. Jin and her associate walked back to the boat without another word, climbed in, motored away until they were just a dot on the horizon. Vivian waited until they were completely gone before she spoke. Did that actually just happen? Apparently. We have a truce with a criminal syndicate. We do. That's insane. That's survival. Vivian looked down at the briefcase still in Minseo's hands. What are you going to do with Ethan's records? Destroy them probably. Keeping them is leverage I don't need and risk I can't afford. Can I see them first? He looked at her carefully. Why? Because I spent 2 years with someone I didn't really know. Maybe seeing the truth in black and white will help me finally put it behind me. Minseo handed her the briefcase. Take whatever time you need. Dosis. Vivian spent 3 hours going through Ethan's financial records. Every lie he'd told laid out in numbers and dates. Every business trip that was actually money laundering. Every vague explanation about work that was actually criminal conspiracy. 2 years of their relationship recontextualized completely. The worst part wasn't the lying. The worst part was how good he'd been at it. How easily he'd maintained 2 separate lives. The devoted boyfriend planning a future with Vivian. The criminal facilitator moving millions for the Jade Circle. She'd never suspected. Not once. And that said something about either his skill or her blindness. Probably both. When she finally closed the briefcase, Minseo was sitting on the deck waiting for her. You okay? He asked. I don't know yet. Vivian sat beside him. Part of me wants to be angry, to feel betrayed all over again, but mostly I just feel sad. For him? For the version of me that loved him. She was so naive, so trusting. She believed everything he said because she wanted it to be true. That's not naivety. That's hope. Hope gets you hurt. So does cynicism. At least hope lets you try. Vivian leaned against him. When did you get wise? About 3 months ago, when a woman I barely knew walked into a tea house full of armed men to save my life. That was stupid, not wise. Best kind of stupid there is. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the ocean. 3 months on this island had changed them both, softened some edges, sharpened others. Vivian's skin had tanned, her hair had lightened. She'd learned to swim in water so clear she could see the bottom 20 feet down. She'd learned to cook Thai food from the local woman who brought them supplies twice a week. She'd learned to sleep through tropical storms and wake to sunrises that looked like paintings. She'd learned what it felt like to be safe with someone dangerous. Can I ask you something? She said quietly. Always. Do you think Yuna would have liked me? Minseo was quiet for a long time, then, I think she would have recognized you. As what? As someone who survived something that should have broken them. She had that same quality, like she'd been through fire and came out the other side made of something harder. What happened to her? Really? I don't know. I've stopped looking, stopped hoping she'd reappear someday with an explanation. He paused. Meeting you taught me something. What? That holding on to ghosts means missing what's right in front of you. I can honor what Yuna meant to me without letting her absence define the rest of my life. That's very emotionally healthy for a crime boss. I have layers. Terrifying and thoughtful, my favorite combination. Minseo pulled her closer. What about you? Can you let go of Ethan? Vivian thought about it. Really thought about it. I think I already have, she said slowly. Not because I forgive him, but because carrying that anger around feels like letting him win. He took 2 years of my life. I'm not giving him any more time. What are you giving your time to instead? She looked up at him. Figuring out what comes next. With you, if you'll have me. I thought we already decided that 3 months ago. We decided I'd stay until we figured things out. I'm saying I want to stay even after we figure things out, permanently, whatever that looks like. Minseo's expression shifted into something vulnerable and fierce simultaneously. You know what permanently means in my world? Probably danger and instability and moving every few months when staying in one place gets too risky. And you want that? I want you. Everything else is just logistics. He kissed her, slow and deep and full of promises neither of them could guarantee, but both of them meant anyway. When they pulled apart, the sun was setting, sky painted in shades of orange and purple and gold. We should burn those documents, Minseo said, before someone comes looking for them. Agreed. They built a fire on the beach as darkness fell, fed Ethan's entire financial history to flames 1 page at a time, watched 2 years of lies turn to ash and scatter across sand. It felt like closure, not the kind Vivian had imagined when she'd walked into that Paris cathedral. Not revenge or vindication or proof she'd moved on, just quiet acceptance that some things couldn't be fixed, only released. When the last page burned, Minseo pulled her close. What now? He asked. Vivian looked at the ocean stretching endlessly in every direction, at the stars beginning to appear overhead, at the man beside her who'd started as a stranger and become everything. Now we live, she said simply. However long we get, wherever we end up, we just live. That's not much of a plan. That's the only plan that matters. Isek. 6 months later. Vivian Laurent stood in a marketplace in Chiang Mai, Thailand, haggling over mangoes and broken Thai, while Minseo watched from a distance, pretending not to be amused. They'd left the island 3 weeks earlier when staying longer became more risk than safety. Moved north to a city big enough to disappear in but small enough to feel human. Rented a small house near the old city. Adopted a 3-legged cat who showed up one day and refused to leave. Started building something that looked almost like a normal life if you didn't look too closely at the security measures or the way Minseo constantly scanned crowds for threats. Casey had finally stopped calling. Vivian had sent one message 6 months earlier, just enough to let her know she was alive and safe, and making choices that probably seemed insane from the outside, but made perfect sense from within. Casey had responded with approximately 40 questions and zero judgment. They texted occasionally, carefully, nothing that could be traced or used as leverage, but enough to maintain connection. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And honest was all Vivian had energy for anymore. The mango vendor handed over her purchase with a smile. Vivian paid and walked back to where Minseo was pretending to examine silk scarves. "Got everything you need?" he asked. "For tonight's curry, yes. For life, still figuring it out." "That's fair." They walked through the market together. Just two more tourists among hundreds. Nobody looked at them twice. Nobody recognized the Korean man who'd once burned 40 million in criminal merchandise, or the American woman who'd saved his life. They were just people, complicated and damaged and trying to build something real from the wreckage of everything that came before. "I got a message from Jin," Minseo said quietly as they walked. "What did it say?" "That the truce is holding, that her European operations are stable, that she appreciates our continued discretion." "That's good." "That's surprising. Truces in my world usually last 6 months maximum." "Maybe she's getting sentimental too. Maybe she's just smart enough to recognize that peace is more profitable than war." They turned down a quieter street, the sounds of the market fading behind them. Minseo's hand found hers, casual, comfortable, the kind of gesture that came from months of practice. "Do you miss it?" Vivian asked. "Your old life, the power, the fear." "Sometimes. Mostly I just miss certainty, knowing exactly who I was and what I was capable of. And now? Now I'm figuring it out, same as you. We're a mess. We're alive. That's better than the alternative." They reached their house as the sun started setting. The three-legged cat was waiting on the porch, looking annoyed that dinner was late. Minseo unlocked the door. Vivian carried the groceries inside. They moved around the small kitchen with practiced efficiency. Chopping vegetables. Starting rice. The kind of domestic routine that would have bored Vivian to tears a year ago. Now it felt like peace. Not perfect peace. Not the kind where nothing bad could ever happen again. Just the fragile temporary peace that came from surviving something terrible and choosing to keep going anyway. "Can I tell you something?" Vivian said as they cooked. "Always." A year ago, if someone had told me I'd be living in Thailand with a former mafia boss cooking curry and adopting disabled cats, I would have thought they were insane. And now? Now I think this might be the sanest thing I've ever done. Minseo looked at her. "Even knowing everything you know, everything I've done? Especially knowing that. Because you've never lied about what you are, and that's worth more than any promise of safety." "I'm still dangerous. I know. People will always be looking for ways to use you against me. I know that too. And you're okay with it?" Vivian set down her knife, walked over to where he was standing, took his face in both hands. "I'm not okay with it," she said clearly. "I'm terrified most of the time. I wake up some nights convinced someone's going to kick down our door. I jump at loud noises. I scan crowds for threats I probably wouldn't recognize if I saw them." "Then why stay?" "Because being terrified with you feels more honest than being safe with anyone else. Because I'd rather have complicated and real than simple and fake. Because somewhere between that wedding and this kitchen, you became my home. And I'm done running from the only place I've ever felt like I belonged." Minseo's eyes were wet. Actually wet. Like maybe he was capable of crying after all. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. "Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway." He kissed her. Hard and desperate and full of everything neither of them knew how to say. When they pulled apart, the curry was burning. They laughed and salvaged what they could and ate dinner on their small porch while the three-legged cat judged them and the Chiang Mai night settled around them warm and alive. And for the first time since Vivian Laurent had opened that cream-colored wedding invitation 8 months earlier, she felt completely at peace with the chaos of her choices. She'd walked into a cathedral beside a monster and walked out having saved his life. She'd survived criminal syndicates and international flight and the death of the man she'd once loved. She'd given up everything familiar for something uncertain, and somehow, impossibly, she'd found exactly what she needed in the last place she ever expected to look. Not safety, not perfection, Not the future she'd planned. Just honest, complicated, dangerous love with a man who saw all her broken pieces and chose her anyway. That night, lying in bed with Minseo's arm around her and the sounds of Chiang Mai filtering through open windows, Vivian thought about where she'd been and where she'd ended up. Thought about Ethan and the 2 years she'd spent building a future with a ghost. Thought about that wedding and the burgundy dress and the moment everything changed. Thought about Minseo watching her from behind a newspaper in a Paris cafe and making a choice that set everything in motion. "Do you regret it?" she whispered into the darkness. "Any of it?" "Which part?" "All of it. Approaching me in Paris, the wedding, Seoul, bringing me here." Minseo was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I regret that you had to see Ethan die. I regret that you had to run from your entire life. I regret every moment you've been scared because of choices I made. But I don't regret meeting you. I don't regret keeping you close. I don't regret falling in love with you, even though it makes me more vulnerable than I've been in 6 years. Vivian's breath caught. "You love me? Isn't it obvious? You've never said it. I've never had to. But if you need the words..." He turned to face her in the darkness. "I love you, Vivian Laurent. I love your courage and your stubbornness and the way you walked into a room full of armed men to save someone you barely knew. I love that you chose chaos with me over safety without me. I love you so much it terrifies me, and I'm done pretending I don't." Vivian felt tears burning behind her eyes. Happy tears this time. The kind that came from finally hearing something you'd been waiting to hear without realizing you were waiting. "I love you too," she whispered, "even though you're dangerous and complicated and probably going to get us both killed someday. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. That's deeply concerning. Welcome to my world." They fell asleep holding each other while Chiang Mai breathed around them, and the future stretched out uncertain and dangerous and completely theirs. And somewhere in Paris, in a cemetery where Ethan Vale was buried under a headstone paid for by life insurance money his widow would never collect, rain fell on fresh earth, and the past finally stopped mattering. Because some stories don't end with closure or revenge or justice. Some stories just end with survival, with two broken people finding each other in the wreckage and choosing to build something new from the pieces. With love that looked like danger from the outside but felt like safety from within. With a woman in burgundy silk who'd walked into a cathedral to prove she'd moved on and walked out having saved a monster who turned out to be exactly what she needed. Not perfect. Not safe. Not anything like what she'd planned. Just real. And honest. And finally, impossibly, enough.